Does everybody have a ballot? Anybody not have a ballot? Anybody care?
Does anybody have 4 of them?
Raise your hand.
Oh, yes. Anybody have 4 of them? Yes. I've got 3 of them that were emailed to me. And,
does anybody need a pen? Sorry, I don't remember.
Bunch of them on the counter up here.
He couldn't resist. Oh, yes, that is true.
Tom, do we need to use the SARA pens to make the ballot official?
Yeah, if it's not done with the SARA pen, you throw it in.
Okay.
Well, by the way, if you didn't know, you can pay your bill now for your hotel or your dormitory. Yeah, it's all online now. They got everything fixed. The bills are working, even the Williams. So they, but yes, I went and paid my bill first just to show it.
When you're done, just fold it in half.
But yeah, you can walk over there anytime. It's easier if you do it today than tomorrow.
Walk over where? And then that's fine.
Down the hall.
Well, I should explain why I'm turning in 4, you know. As secretary, I'm supposed to be looking at this email once
next room, Harley then rings you up and takes your credit card, firstborn male child, you know.
Well, they can have one.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. We stopped doing that.
Pay their coffee bills too, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Too many people wanting to sell their firstborn slavery.
You don't, there's no requirement to vote for anybody. You can pencil somebody in if you'd like. Or you can vote, you know, fill in the blanks.
Paper airplane.
Do it after the vote.
Do what after the vote?
Paper, I heard somebody say making the paper airplanes, and I said,
oh, okay. We're going to do our campaign speeches after the vote too, right?
if anybody needs a pen, you don't have to fold it, but I have my, or you can fold it, that's fine, because the party, they're just going to go in the computer.
We're asking them to fold them in half.
Did you get?
Oh, we are
not quarters, 8 cents.
Just half.
Did you get a ballot?
I'll return it.
Oh, you turned yours in. Okay. Good. Just wanted to make, I just saw you walk in and wanted to use this.
Just pass them to the center, or
Hey, Ken, when does the electoral polls happen?
we're never going to do that.
What, the electoral college?
Yes, we only have a high school, so.
We got one more here.
So always, as they say, vote early and often.
Good drinks and things like that.
Whatever color's available, thank you, sir. As always. And I believe we can leave the voting open until the gentleman finishes speaking if we get later on.
Well, yeah, then we'll take them after he's done.
Right, then we'll sequester you. So, is there any more ballots? I think we have them all. Well, that was quick.
So how's the meeting going, President?
I think the meeting is going very well. We've only had our first minor hiccup, and that was the issue with the truck, but I think I will keep an eye out for them. I've been encouraged by the papers. I keep wanting to come back the next year.
You must be so bright, you have to shake them.
No, I'm going to chalk it up to 2 surgeries, and just they hurt, and sometimes it's just a, you know. And actually, these are the good kind. You can actually see still. And the blown. So if I go like that, I don't see anymore. It's really never a dull war. Has everybody been pleased with the housing? I'm kind of I'm noticing, maybe it's just me, but like, and I know that they're probably trying with funds, they're having problems, but like in the cafeteria, I've noticed, you know, like they don't have the selection of jellies. And I came in and all they had was sugar cereal. There was no Raisin Bran, you know, for the old parts.
They had Raisin Bran the first day, but they ran out. They always seem to have a less Raisin Bran than they need.
Because the kids like the sugar bombs, right? So, but the food has been really good. I've been very pleased with that. I want to make sure that I can remember there. And
Who's staying at the boiler?
I'm sorry?
Ask who's staying at the boiler.
Okay, who's, all right.
How is the boiler?
Adequate, I believe the description was online.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
Oh, only I have never seen Pop, I've just seen Mom.
you did what?
I haven't seen Murphy either, I've just seen.
We actually got our bill paid yesterday, but I saw her, but not him.
Yeah, I'll go to Battle to pay the bill.
Nobody wants you.
They don't charge enough.
No.
So I fight with Murphy and give them all the money.
I always make sure I don't have the proper change. And so I round up.
Oh, you must be from here.
Yeah, they don't charge very much, you know, and
And
I've
they're
been
trying to sell
staying
clothes.
there for 20 years. And,
You're telling your
So-
age.
hmm?
You're telling your age.
Yeah, well, 3 of us have been here since 1990. So just remember, the 3 old geezers will get you.
I don't know how you tell the 3 old geezers.
Yeah, which 3 old?
See, the beauty of that statement is it keeps Adrian off guard, so he doesn't know who the other 2 are.
Did they have transistors back then?
Let me see.
Yeah, we have CK722s.
Yeah, there were bone ties and rocks.
My entire life was spent with vacuum tubes, 1 course in transistors, 1 in Boolean and algebra.
Okay.
Thank God I did see vacuum tubes in the early IBM computers.
That brings up an interesting point. Apropos of nothing discussed so far. I was out looking at that horn from Harvard University, where they say they detected hydrogen, and that's got a diode mixer at the waveguide feed at the end of it. Damn, the hydrogen must have been strong in those days. No FFT analyzers.
Well,
No
you know, FFT wasn't invented for 1962.
Didn't they have SFT
Yeah.
back
It
then?
was actually invented by Gauss.
Mm-hmm.
FFT was invented by Gauss. So it's very, very old.
I mean, it's old, but I don't think.
Including cookies on it, but it was not
Yeah, but Gauss didn't have a computer to take
He
advantage of
invented it, and he was doing it all by hand.
Yeah.
And then you had to figure out how to get rid of all those multipliers.
it. Yeah.
So the point is, it'd be interesting to see what the numbers were and how you were able to see.
You can go pull that paper. That paper's available.
Considering all the trouble that people have trying to see their first hydrogen line, listening to the discussions.
Yeah, that was 1947.
I think 51 is the approximate.
47 is when the Kennedy Spectre.
How's the money going, Jack?
I have not
14,
checked.
20, I forgot to give that one.
We will sequester them after.
The
I
plaque
suggested that there could be a hydrogen line at 1420. It was about 1947, I think.
but could be and detected.
Chip, did you vote?
I've actually seen the proposal to sell low to get the money to build that.
Mike, come on out.
Excellent.
On the city, those guys were real guys.
This is Mike Holstein. He is the business manager of the Green Bank Observatory. And there had been some questions and concerns last night. So I asked Mike if he would come and chat with us and tell us the state of the Green Bank Observatory.
At the state of
Mike,
the state.
Thank you, sir.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for coming back here, guys and gals. we really do enjoy having the SARA Conference here, and we hope that you enjoy being here.
Keep the place open.
Yeah, we're trying our best, believe me. So I don't know how much of this you know. Tom, my good friend Tom and I talked a little bit about this, and I guess I really hadn't thought about the fact that last year we were still in RAO. And so you are just now seeing the changes that we've undergone. You probably noticed the new signage, and matter of fact, the sign that's out in front of the lab, we designed and built here ourselves in a machine shop. But give you a brief history. So 2012, many of you may know this, and if you do, please forgive me if I'm going to talk over some things you already are aware of. But in 2012, NSF had a study done that recommended that they divest themselves of the Green Bank Observatory, actually specifically of the GBT. So that set in motion a lot of things. We had been, prior to that, already working with external sources for some funding of some of our telescopes. The 20-meter with the University of North Carolina. Most of them were university-type groups, and still are, mostly. But 2012, Karen, the director, Karen O'Neill, and I really hit the road and started pounding the pavement for external sources of funding, while at the same time questioning NSF's decision about divesting of the GBT, because that doesn't address the rest of the site, and we weren't clear what they meant by divestment of just that one telescope. So 2012 to 2016, we moved a lot faster than the federal government did, and that is a surprise. And we had in place external funding of about 25–30% of our full budget, what our budget had been before. But NSF is still working through the process. And as we talk even right now, they are still working through their process. So they have hired a contractor, a consultant, CH2 MKill. Many of you may know that name. They do a lot of federal work, to do an environmental impact statement about 5 different options for the GBT, or now the entire site. But also, at the same time, in 2015, NSF decided to recompete the contract for the management of all of NRAO. But because of the divestiture report, they separated out Green Bank and the VLA from that recompetition. So what that meant is that basically by fiat, GBO had to become its own entity. We certainly don't really mind that. We think we can do pretty well. So by October 2016, GBO was its own organization. We are completely separate from NRAO. We are the Green Bank Observatory. We still have connections with NRAO through what we call service level agreements. So they help us with some of our HR stuff, and we're still, AUI won the management contract of NRAO. NSF extended their management contract of GBO. So AUI is still the overriding management agency for now 3 entities: Green Bank Observatory, National Radio Astronomy Observatory, and the VLBA, which has been renamed the Long Baseline Observatory. So there's LBO, GBO, and NRAO. So October 2016, just a few months after you guys were here, we had an inauguration, and we inaugurated the institution of Green Bank Observatory. You see the posters we have up, you see all the new signage. I was telling Tom, you have no idea what 59 years of letterheads, signs, posters, everything that you can think of that had NRAO on it, I had to, by order of NSF, I had to get rid of and had to switch to GBO. So I'm sure you may still see some things hanging around that we just have missed, but that was a major chore. But we've got it done. We have continued to search for external sources of funding. And right now, what we have on site is the 20 meter, which is funded in part by the University of North Carolina. We are part of the Nanograv Physics Center. They are receiving lots of money from NSF. One of their two main instruments is the GBT. NSF says you've got to keep using the GBT for this work. At the same time, they're saying we're going to divest the GBT. So it's a really funny thing, but we're getting money from Nanograv, and we're getting money from the Russian Space Agency. I had a personal conversation with Donald Trump, and he's good with it. Radio Astron is the project. They have an orbiting radio telescope. It's been up for several years. We are the only Earth station in the Western Hemisphere that can receive the downlink of the data. And so every time they come over our part of the world, they pay us a good amount of money to receive the data from them. So this year, FY17, we're actually in pretty good shape. We really have a little more money than we had when the NSF was funding us. Right. However, they still haven't made their decision. We understand that the draft, and so now I'm going to go full circle, the EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, and thank this organization for sending a letter in support of GBO. We appreciate that. I know that you did. The EIS is a strange bird. It's not environmental like you normally think of, at least in this last call. It's not the environment. It's not the grounds. It's not chemicals. And it's the socio-economic environment of 5 options that NSF outlined. One is to fully fund us. 2 is to fund us partially with us finding external sources of funding, kind of where we are. 3 is stop all science here and turn it into an education and research park. 4 is close the facility, but just leave it alone. And 5 is close the facility and raise it down back to original conditions. So as far as I'm concerned, 4 and 5 are out the window. We don't want any of that. Don't really want 3, because if this becomes an educational only institution without research being done, I don't know how much educational impact that would have. So we hope that 1 or 2 are the options that are going to be proffered by NSF. We don't really think that 1 is realistic. I'm really thinking that 2, and I do think they're considering 3 as their option, but we don't want that one. So we had the EIS call, and the public could have meetings. We had public comment period here. On one day, they had 2 meetings. The Science Center was completely overwhelmed, standing room only, and that was local community, but we had buses that came from Morgantown. That we didn't arrange. They did this all on their own, which was fantastic. Students came in from all parts of the country, and people could send in letters. We had 350 people that signed up to speak at the comment periods. Of course, they could handle that. About 65 or so spoke at each of the 2 meetings. We had over 800 letters submitted to the NSF, which in comparison, I think Arecibo, which is going through the same thing, had 100 and some letters, if I'm not mistaken. So we had a huge turnout in support of us, and we can't thank people enough for that. That was last November. We were told the draft EIS would be out sometime in the spring. It's not out yet. We think that it will come out next month with another public comment period in September. I anticipate that that would probably be near the end of September. Then it's going to go back into process, and they're going to make a decision, we hope, by January or February. So with all of that being said, we are continuing to operate business as usual. We're anticipating that we're going to be here for a long time. We're certainly going to act like we're going to be here for a long time. And we're going to continue to have groups like yours come in and do your thing. And we appreciate all the support that you've given us, and hopefully will continue to give us. Yes, sir.
How will this affect the quiet designation?
Good question. So there are 2 zones. There's the West Virginia Radio Astronomy Zone, which was actually created first in 1956. The way the state law reads, it's a 10-mile radius around any radio astronomy facility in the state of West Virginia. We are really the only one. If we were to be closed, the WBRAZ would still be in existence, of course, but would no longer be here because we'd no longer be a radio astronomy facility. So if one were to pop up somewhere else, they'd still have that protection. The National Radio Quiet Zone, which was formed in 1958 by Congress, is the much larger zone. It's 13,000 square miles. It would continue to exist because it was originally designed to protect us and the Naval Research Facility at Sugar Grove. Sugar Grove is still in existence. They've actually expanded. They're no longer a Naval Research Facility, but the NSA now owns the upper base. And they have told us that it would probably become more restrictive, at least closer to them. But right now, we're managing all of the administration of that zone for both of us. So it wouldn't affect that one at all. Yep. Yes?
Do you think we can put pressure on somebody? That would be useful instead of just beating down.
I have, I'll buy all the baseball bats you want. Probably not until the draft comes out. Okay. And then I think there will be a time when we can comment again and see what can come of that. Yes?
Does the current budgetary indecision in Washington have anything to do with this situation?
Does the current
budgetary indecision?
A little bit. You know, of course, this happened in 2012, so it was not even this administration. It was the previous administration. But how it affects us right now is that we have at least one external project or external funding source that would like to use this facility for, actually they're not really even interested in the instruments. They want to use us more as a, for lack of better terms, a convention center. They want to be able to come here. It's a group of people. It's the DOD. It's a group of people that need to meet with contractors on research projects that they're working on. But because a lot of contractors that do work for DOD have foreign nationals, they cannot have them on their facilities. So they're looking for a neutral place that has the capabilities that we do for machine shop work and things like that. And the lab that could bring contractors in as a neutral area. They could spend 2 weeks of the year meeting with these contractors, fine-tuning their designs, doing whatever they need to do with really very little help from us unless they needed some expertise in a quiet reference area. And they're willing to pay a lot of money for that. They can't make that final determination on funding until they have a budget. And the continuing resolutions are not a final budget. And so we're just kind of waiting to see how that all falls out. But we think that might be a good source of money for us. Yes, sir.
So how is the title for the land and all the equipment handled at NSF?
It's all owned by the National Science Foundation.
And do they just convey that title to you, or is it to this organization?
They still own it.
They still own it?
They still own it. Therefore, if they decide to close the facility, it's up to them to do whatever they're going to do with it. Raise it, take over whatever liabilities there are here. It's funny because in this circumstance, for the last now 60 years, we have been extremely good stewards of this facility. We make sure that there's no environmental damage of any kind. You know, there are no oil leaks there. I mean, for everything, we really try to keep this place clean. Now I wish we'd have messed the place up. Because NSF would have to take that liability and they'd say, oh, that's too much for us to deal with. But believe me, the cost to raise this facility is astronomical. Because I told them it was going to be astronomical. So at any rate, yeah, they own. Cool. Yeah. Korea must have launched another missile. They have made an agreement with associated universities that property under a certain threshold, a few $1,000s, if whatever were to happen, worst case, AUI would take possession of that, but we're talking desks, chairs, things like that. The property, the buildings, the land around it would all be, it always has been, always will be, National Science Foundation land.
So are you going to rent it? How does that work?
Well, I understand, okay, I see where you're going. That's a really good question. So, when we talk about external sources of funding, we have to get approval from NSF to allow their telescope to be used by an external contractor or an external entity, for instance. So GBT time is a good example of that. Nanograv, Breakthrough Listen. Breakthrough Listen is one of the only non-university based groups that has provided external funding for us. Breakthrough Listen's a private organization, in essence. We had to get approval from NSF to allow them to purchase 20% of the time on the GBT. NSF agreed to it. There were certainly stipulations put on it, but the side load to that is that if Breakthrough Listen buys time on the GBT, Breakthrough Listen owns the data. If NSF isn't providing the telescope time, it's not open skies anymore. So NSF has to agree under these situations that they are losing the science provided by their telescope. So that's been a long process. That's been a long discussion with the National Science Foundation. And it's one that is imperative to the U.S. astronomical community. community, we think, and it's one that came up in a lot of the letters that were sent to the NSF. The benefit of the Breakthrough Listen project is that they have agreed to release all of their data after a year. They want it for a year, then they'll release it to the entire scientific community. So we're very careful on who we're trying to get external funds from. We don't want to upset the mission of the facility. We don't want to upset the mission of the telescopes or of the scientific data, but we are going to have to find these external projects in order to continue to thrive here. Yes?
So I've noticed now outside entities can buy time on your anechoic chamber for testing antennas, your outdoor antenna range.
Mm-hmm.
How's that working out?
It's working okay. I mean, one of the ironic things is that NRAO has to buy time in our anechoic chamber, and they have to buy time on our antenna test range. One of the things that the NSF required was that when NRAO, which now is the VLA and ALMA, once this occurred, this transition, VLA had to build their own anechoic chamber, and they had to build their own outdoor antenna range. And yeah, it's a ton of money. I mean, they had to buy machine shop equipment when we've already got all of that. It's really a silly thing, in my opinion. So to some extent, they decided that they would do some of that, but they weren't going to do all of it because they can rent the time from us to do it. And what we'll do, gladly do, is trade SLA type work for that. So we're trying to keep this reasonable as much as we can, but there are certain things that NSF required happen, then we had to make those things happen. And machine shop time. We are selling machine shop time, without a doubt. Yes, sir.
Is there any plan to turn something like the Tattle telescope into some sort of an educational, less expensive option for some of the colleges and universities? I mean, that's a beautiful instrument to just sit in there.
Mm-hmm. We've certainly talked about that. We've talked about every instrument that we have on site and what we can do with those. And we don't, until this decision's made, we don't know how far to go. But also, unless we have someone who has interest in that proposition, we don't want to do anything on our own that would change the atmosphere of the site.
I don't live very far from where it was built. I know what a Blalock site is.
Yeah?
That Kate had put that all together. So that's kind of a hometown thing, and it's sure a shame to see all of those just go away.
The 85s are all available for external projects. They all are available. So as soon as someone comes to us with interest for it, we put together a paper that gives the specifications and the capabilities of every telescope on site. And we provided that to a number of organizations, mostly other government organizations or those looking at space situational awareness projects. We're working right now with a group that's going to launch CubeSats and need some downlink capabilities, and they're trying to figure out which telescope they'd like to use for that. And of course we have cost per hour for each one of them, and you know, we tried to fill out this entire business plan that would allow a group to make a reasonable decision.
What would time on something like the 85 run?
It's a few $100 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
No, it's not. The GBT, of course, is several $1,000s an hour, but that's because of its capabilities and the newness of the telescope and that sort of thing. It's kind of interesting. One of the things that NSF required us to look at was the depreciation, the remaining value of the facilities, the instruments and the buildings and all of that. And to some extent, it's like they don't really realize how long we've been here because everything's already been depreciated. There's really, it's old, you know, it's just well maintained and capabilities have remained.
So when you do downlinking, what do they do for the uplink?
They don't need an uplink. They have an onboard maser that gives their timing. They do all of their spacecraft control from, is it Luchinka? From Russia. Well, I always want to say Soviet Union. From Russia. They are concerned that their maser is going to die on them because that telescope was designed in the 70s. If that happens, then we may have to uplink a timing signal to them on a fairly regular basis, but that's all. You had another question?
Is your educational outreach program over here, is it self-sustaining or is that costing?
It's not self-sustaining, it's almost. One of the really curious things about the divestiture report and the, actually, as an effect of the divestiture report, but of the recompetition of the management contract in 2015 is that NSF told NRAO that they could not count any existing educational program as part of the NRAO recompetition. And that was a real scramble for NRAO because Green Bank is the headquarters. It has always been the main educational component of NRAO. So we assumed all of the education back into the Green Bank Observatory and into our operations because previously it was under Charlottesville, under their management. We assumed it all back into us. It has become almost self-sustaining, and we're working to make it self-sustaining. But what it meant was that NRAO now is trying to develop their own educational component, which is, again, a cost that NSF is having to bear that they wouldn't have to bear if they could just let things alone. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned that you still have a relationship with NRAO services.
Yes.
Is one of those services archives?
Yes.
So Charlottesville is still handling the archives for this place?
Yes. Although West Virginia University has offered to take that for us.
Okay.
They've actually talked to us about doing library services and archive services, and it's something that once we know where we're going to be, that's something that we'll certainly consider.
Because the library is right.
Yeah. Yeah. Our library was even a lot better until Charlottesville took most of it.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
It's still good.
Right, but it's still good, yes, and we want to continue that. Yes, sir.
In May, there was a conference in Morgantown. I know Green Bank and Arecibo participated. It was an international conference. Canadians and Mexicans were there. On the question of the science case for single dish observatories.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the proceedings published from that. Did anything come from that that would support maintenance, long-term maintenance of the facility?
You know, I haven't either. I don't know what that was. I think that was run by, I want to say Nanograv, because it was a WVU. I'm not certain of that, but I think they would have whatever proceedings came from it. We hold I want to say every other year, although I think in the last 3 years we've done it every year. There's always been a single dish, what we call a single dish summer school. They changed the name of it this year to, if I can remember, I can't, some acronym. And it's the same type of colloquia, mainly run, it used to be run by us in Arecibo. Arecibo has since sort of dropped out of that thing. We maintained it. Arecibo has been coming here. Matter of fact, this past year, they came here for their single dish summer school. And it is more guided to the science capabilities, the science case, and the actual hands-on operation of single dish telescopes. But that's an interesting question, and I'll ask Mara and them to see if they've got something from it.
We just heard the jet overflight. That seems kind of unusual. What allows that?
If you look out to the west, the first ridge of mountains is basically our property line. But that's also the edge of what's called the Evers MOA, Military Operations Area. It's been there for decades. So the easiest way to think about it is basically it's the Greenbrier River Valley. They fly here all the time over there. But you can hear them depending on how low they are and everything. Usually they stay right below the ridgetop. They contact us and let us know when the MOA is going to be active so that we can log that information. But I can tell you that in the last 3 weeks, almost 4, it has been very active. Very active. Most of the time prior to this, it was trainers, T-38, a lot of F-16s. I've seen a B-2, a lot of military activity. But it is designated as a military operations area.
So you don't have to take any action with the GBT to...
No, they're not supposed to be over this facility. Tom?
Well, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other NSF facilities besides this in Arecibo are on the block?
There are a few optical. There's, I think, a solar observatory. There's a couple of optical telescopes. The VLBA, which is now the LBO, is one. But the LBO is so tied to the VLA in their operations that I don't think anything will happen to LBO. They had to separate out and sort of keep their budget numbers separate, but I think they're fine. As far as major facilities, it's us and Arecibo.
Thank you.
Okay. Hope I didn't hold you up.
Oh, good. Very good.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Enjoy.
you. Thank you so much.
A couple of years.
Well, has everybody voted? Everybody that was planning to vote. So, everybody?
What was the,
So we will sequester, and there's the 3, there's, yes, and then there was one other.
Just one of the...
Who did I ask?
So we'd like to count the votes.
Yes, oh, that's well, right.
We got 3 of us. We just need 3 things.
Okay. Bill, could you give a real quick for the visit? This is the short visit. I hope you don't mind. I sort of felt it was good to hear from the project manager for this site because it is in our future. We plan to be here next year, so, and hopefully subsequent years. So Bill's going to give an update on our finances. So, Bill.
Thanks, Ken. I'm Bill Dean. I'm the treasurer. I was elected last year, so I'm just finishing up the first year of tenure, and I'm finishing out the unexpired year of Gary Memory. And I want to thank Gary Memory for continuing to do some of the duties of the treasurer, like providing the snacks out at the breaks. And also he did the proceedings, and he did the CDs, and the badges for the Western Conference. He did the proceedings for the Western Conference. He did the CDs for the Western Conference. But at any rate, I thought when I took over this job that after a year, I would basically know the basics of the job, and that was probably a little bit too optimistic. There's no instruction manual. It's basically me and the long distance phone to Melinda in Iowa, and she trains me over the phone on how to do entries into QuickBooks and Yahoo and Wells Fargo, blah, blah, blah. But all that aside, what I'm trying to do is, as you realize, Melinda Lord was a treasurer for about 10 years, and she set up most of the procedures for the accounting and for the operation of the organization. And then Gary Memory took over from her 2 years ago, and because of job responsibilities, he was not able to continue full-time, and so Melinda took it back for several months, and then I took it over, a year ago. And basically what I'm trying to do is compile a procedure manual and actually write down the procedures in detail so that whoever takes over from me after my term, whether that ends today or 2 years from now, they will have a written document to refer to, and we won't have to depend so heavily upon Melinda to train somebody every year to take over the treasurer duties. So I'm trying to generate some consistency and long-term sustainability is the term I'm really looking for. So that's where we stand today. Having said all that, we're in good financial condition. I mean, we're in excellent financial condition, actually. We have in the neighborhood of $61,000 in assets. As of the 31st of June, we had over $18,000 in checking. That's June of this year, June 30th. We had over $19,000 in savings. We have a certificate of deposit for $12,000. And we have over $11,000 in a PayPal account. So I then transfer at the end of the year some of that PayPal money over into savings, and so we just keep operational expenses in PayPal. So anyway, that all adds up to close to $61,000. And so we use a lot of that money for a grant program. We have a very strong sales of the Super SIDS, and Keith Paya in California takes care of that program, and I coordinate with him in the accounting of that. And I've had to work out some procedures with him to deal with grant-funded receivers versus paid-for receivers, blah, 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 which I won't bore you with. But over the year, the past 12 months, he's shipped over 100 of these units. And I know that they've gone to Cambodia, they've gone to France, they've gone to India. These things go all over the world. And that is a big outreach for this organization. So Super SID has been very, very popular and very effective in getting our name recognition out. And it also generates a lot of new members as well. So Super SID is a really good thing. The bad news is we lost about 100 members last year, but on the other hand, we gained about 80, and 4 of those were lifetime members. So we're holding our own as far as members go. Right now, formally, we have over 400 members, probably closer to 500. And we sort of hover around the 400 to 500 level. And I'm in charge of course, sending out the notifications for renewal, and I do that periodically. And so there will be people who have formally, not renewed from 2015 or whatever, and I'll bug them, and some of those people will renew over time. So again, we keep getting new members. If you look in the journal that you see online every 2 months, in the back of that is a listing of new members, where they're located, and so that'll give you an idea of the new members that are coming in. So that is about all I feel that I need to say. I'll welcome any questions that you might have while you got me here. Questions, comments, or complaints? Yes, sir.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for all the work you're doing. I like SARA too. I'm just wondering, I know what I'm not SARA, I mean a superset.
Correct.
When I've used it, I had this initial burst of activity, and then I slacked off and did other things. I don't wonder how many of the kits sent out, how many people really get in and do something with it, and how many continue.
I can't answer that because I handle the money aspect. Keith Paya handles all the technical aspects and the coordination in answering their questions. Sometimes people will ask me technical questions and I'll have to refer that to Keith. So he's a better person to ask that question, but I get the impression that a lot of them are in fact put into service. But I cannot give you any sort of idea on what percentage of them fall, to the wayside and how many are actually put into service. But most of them that I see, particularly the grant-supported ones, go to educational institutions where there's a teacher or a really gung-ho student that really wants to get the thing going. And so I sort of feel that because it's not going to just an individual, it's going to an institution that has some infrastructure associated with it, that a large percentage of them actually are put into use. But that's just my personal opinion. Okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience.
I did want to bring up two items. Number one, they now have their billing system is all working, so if you could go please take care of your, I guess that would be room, wouldn't it? Not room and board. But I went ahead and paid mine, it was very quick. You go to Christine, you get your invoice, and you take it to Harley, and then he brings it up. So just FYI that. And the second thing, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but since we have that money, we're looking at areas for grants, and we're looking right now at the CubeSat, but not the CubeSat so much, looking at doing something first using a balloon, and just get some numbers, get some data, actually do something, and not say we're going to do something, and that's what I'm looking for. So that's something else we discussed last night in the board meeting. So Wayne McCain in the back is going to put a proposal together for us, and then we're going to determine where we want to go from there. But our goal is to first, let's do a balloon, let's get some data, let's show we can do this, and then we'll talk about next steps. So that was also brought up in the business meeting last night. And I want to personally apologize last night for those, some didn't get connected, but we did have a quorum last night here, so we were able to have the board meeting. So, yes?
If you get a balloon, hypothetically, would you launch it here during a meeting so everybody could participate?
That's the other thing, is we're looking for input from anybody, and I don't know what they let us, because, I mean, they let the jets go. Just
maybe you already touched on this, but we've lost a lot of balloons, always transmitters, but for a lot of different purposes, radio relay and data. But
here?
No, that's the point. They've all been in Tennessee. But they all radio noises, so getting permission would be something you have to worry about.
Edge of Space Sciences in Colorado does this all the time for all the universities. So they're actually, you just look them up on the web and they'll just charge you a amount and they'll hook your payload up and send it up. They do that on a daily basis.
Well, could you mention that to Wayne?
Yeah.
Because like I said, Wayne will be, in a sense, the project or lead at this point, as far as, and it's so funny to hear that because I get hammered at work all the time. Gotta have a project plan, gotta blah, blah, blah. And it's like, engineers hate those. You know, we just want to get in there and start doing it. And so, but it's best practices. So is there any other, I gave you the abridged version. I really thought an update on the Greenback facility was very beneficial for us, and that's why I wanted to go ahead and do that.
Okay, yeah, one other thing discussed last night is the extra half day.
Oh.
That dates.
Thank you, Bruce. We are talking about next year, we would like to have a combined SARA Radio Jove conference next year. And the date that we're looking at is the 10th to the 13th of June. And what we would do is that we would extend the conference a half a day to incorporate the Radio Jove people. So what we would do is we would be here till Wednesday. Instead of leaving Wednesday in the morning, we would leave Wednesday at lunchtime. We talked about compressing it, but then we decided that that would be the better way to go. So we would have our conference, and then we would have their conference. And I got a feeling a lot of our membership would participate in that. I know I want to. So,
would you mix the book, like the proceedings together, or?
I'd like to do that. Chuck?
That's a good question. I think that would, why not?
Yeah.
That's what I prefer, just make a bigger proceedings with Radio Jove.
Well,
contributions.
last time there was a separate fee.
Well, it is a separate fee, but, okay guys, come on. To me, I would do it. I would go to both. I mean, you're here, but I mean, that's one more night stay. Most of us are staying till Wednesday anyway.
Yeah.
It's the same.
So, I mean, if anybody has any, they don't like doing that, come see me, but I mean, tentatively, that's, and Chuck, are you going to be the contact person?
I suppose so.
But, I mean, who would be the,
That makes sense, Coach, sure.
Yeah.
I could be the contact person, and I'm also a financial person for Radio Jove too, so I would think we could contribute some money towards the meeting as well. So that's something that we should talk about.
we can work through that, but I think at this juncture, before everybody goes home, we can say, we will come next June. Now, if something comes up in June doesn't work, the other alternative was the middle of July, which was like, I'd have, well, it's on my phone, I think it's like the 15th of July, somewhere in there, as opposed to June. I'm making sure, I'm checking with, how many people were, yes, go ahead.
15th to 18th of July is what you said last night.
And then that's it. That's why I put it on my phone. I only know of one hiccup coming in to this meeting where we had a conflict with a room in the dormitories. But I don't know if there was any others that there was an issue. Because if that's the only one, I'd be happy with that. Just having one. Yes, John.
The other thing is that, we'd have to formally, I don't think this is going to be a problem, but, Radio Jove would have to formally agree.
Okay.
Meaning, I want to make sure that we're going to have a quorum show up.
Yes.
So, before we put things in concrete, I need to talk with the Radio Jove group and just make sure that they're okay with that. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be.
But we have talked about it, and it is
Yeah.
a conversation,
Yeah,
so it's not going to be a surprise.
No.
That's right. That's right. We know this is coming.
It's dust at best right now.
Yeah.
But I would love concrete. I agree with you. We need to have it officially accepted by
your group as a whole.
Hey, by the way, we did vote on that at the board last night, which means basically get the combined conference and so it's allowed, so Ken and Chuck and Tom, people involved in Radio Joe can work that out, but it is authorized as such.
Well, it's authorized, but as Chuck's saying, I think he would just like to have the official, an official acceptance, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
We're not at the bar drinking a beer, so it's, I agree. So if you, between you, could work that, Jim.
But yeah, once Radio Joe people approve that thing, then I think it's a done deal because we approved it by vote last night for our half of it.
And we did, and I mean, we're quite frankly, we would have it anyways. It just won't be and Radio Joe or Radio Joe and SARA. It'll just be SARA. But we're looking for their acceptance, and then so. Any comments?
Remember, you got to check out early on that Wednesday.
Okay, I'll talk with Christine, but I mean, my gut feeling is that if you were to, you need to be out of the room, I would think by noon.
Okay.
And I'll confirm with Christine, and I'll mention that later in the meeting. But it's a good point. We should have, without assuming.
There were two other items that were mentioned at the board meeting that we haven't talked about yet. I'm going to stand up and be here a little bit, but let's see. Our president, Ken Redcap, is supposed to be working with the grant committee, and Tom Crowley was there and sounded quite interested in helping him with that, but we do need to do something on the grant committee to get that more coordinated.
We need volunteers for the grant committee. We're looking for 3. And did we get any last night?
We did not get any last night.
Okay, so what we're looking for, I need to know the official process for that, but who would accept those?
Well, you would appoint them.
That's right. I know.
So he would contact you and then you have to put their interest.
And Crowley said he was interested in one of those positions.
Right. So I need 2 more heads. So if anybody's interested, please contact me, and we can work through that.
Okay, then one other issue that was in there, that the snacks up there for the Drake Lounge, that has all been falling on Janice Osborne to chase after all of that, and she's been doing it for a couple of years apparently, and when somebody gets hit with all of the work or something, it can kind of wear them down, so some help is needed there, and if anybody is willing to help with that, I think probably contact Ken and work from there.
No, Ken has already identified a person, and she's already said she would be delighted.
Okay, so you have identified, so that issue is resolved.
I believe so, but what do they say? Many hands make. So, if there's others that are interested.
And every other item that I have from the notes from the minutes has been addressed already by other people. So we're good.
Okay. Well then, without any further ado, I will give the floor back to Tom. We're a little late. Are we almost to break time?
We're past break time.
I have one question from the previous talk by Mike. Does someone at SARA will track this environmental impact statement? I mean, I don't keep track of that kind of stuff. How are we going to know what happens when that environmental impact statement comes out?
It's originally publicized on the website, the GBO website. Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't get it?
So track it there. Okay.
So
because I as a person and we as a group should be aware of.
Very interested in.
Yeah, and make the appropriate comments at the appropriate time when that opportunity comes about.
Have a committee to pay attention, okay. Are we keeping minutes tonight? Okay. All right. And it was interesting, one last thing, and we'll go on break, but one last thing. I didn't realize that with the environmental impact statement. I thought, like he had initially said, everybody thinks that's, are we putting pollution, but it's the actual, the socioeconomic.
It's almost never been that way for decades.
But
don't call it environmental.
But those of us who never really dug into it, So how long, Tom? 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
10 minutes.
10-minute break. Thank you. So I thought,
So what do you do on the marketplace? Okay, so you're taking the continuous. Okay, so where's the okay, well, yeah, I was wondering. So what's the difference then?
Yeah. So if I'm lucky when you're finished with your jobs, I can just go on.
Should be still on laptop here, so it should just pick up.
At least the flu is clean.
There's an origami guy floating around.
And 20 bucks.
Okay.
Do something similar.
Yes,
But it's impractical, that interface, that's like for somebody you'd have to.
Because they know that we'll just see
There's data that comes out that they say is
So
wrong.
that we can-
I don't think that, yeah, I don't think that's. That would be interesting, because then that would see value. Same thing every year. We're not actually fixed.
So, anyway, that's one.
because I've actually so far pretty good.
Yeah, that's what
But that's something we could have discussion.
Yeah, I do. But thank you, I was curious.
Just because they are to do a lot of stuff, it's like our
Stuff that they thought.
Okay.
The one chances you think you're going to see the 140? They not allow that anymore?
That is only part of the high-tech tour, right? As far as I know. But it might happen as part of the tour, the high-tech tour associated with this. Yeah, I actually haven't seen it. I've been in the
I've read several books talking about this.
It's like the world right now trying to get the projector up.
Yeah.
Okay, you got VGA.
Well, the problem is, this all works, I can't get the projector turned on.
Oh, I'm sorry you asked me.
Yeah, so I figured it was a system.
Is it going to the screen?
I don't
You're not, it's not
I can't get the projector.
It's not going to the screen. So this cable here, this is not the cable for VGA.
No, that's the right cable, that's what I did yesterday. What I'm trying to do is get the power to the, but I think you nailed it. I think this is probably going to be.
Wait a minute, this is.
No, this is okay. This is okay, trust me. But the new thing is to get this thing done. So the question is, everything comes from there.
There's my
That's
problem.
a VGA.
The reason this has been.
I've got the HDMI plugged in. That's the VGA. And the reason auto select it.
No, this is the cable.
No, that one does too. Do that yourself. That's this cable. This is auto switch. Auto select. And you go from there to there. Yeah. What I'm trying to do is get the projector.
That up there.
Yeah. So this.
That was on when I came in.
Right.
So you've got to get to the screen where it shows you the choice of or desktop.
No, that's it. That's it here. That's it here.
Well, there you go.
That's easy. That's the only problem, is getting that turned on.
We had that.
And so I'm trying to find something that turns it on. I think it's probably one of these guys.
Projector on. What this button?
Oh, hit that. Where'd you find that?
It was in an advanced button. Oh, did the light just turn on? Here, let me push it again.
This.
Oh, this makes the screen go up. Let's see if it works. Yes, it works.
All right. Well, that should work the projector too.
It might take time to go on.
It's not acting like it's playing.
Well, give it a minute. It's a red item, right? Well,
It's always been.
here. You want me to turn it off?
Turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been sitting there hitting every button and it's
Okay, now, another thing I would look at is, usually when you push laptop on here, usually when you plug a VGA,
you can't get the projector on.
now usually when you plug VGA into there, your screen will blink. Because it will tell you, are you sure it's coming out?
Projector is not, so we can't tell either way.
But I can't say whether or not it's just not detected. Oh, green.
What'd you just do?
What I did, this thing gets stuck. And what you have to do is say, oh, go flip it over to the desktop, flip it back to the laptop, and then you can stop. It's supposed to do something.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
He had the,
Because I had that on Sundays.
now that looks like it's working.
Yeah.
Because this worked yesterday when I just did everything I just did there.
And you know about the, like,
Don't touch it.
I'm not going to. It's fine. I'm not going to. I'm just going to. There it is. Yeah. The reason I was confused is that this cable.
Well, that cable was
the other one.
This is auto select. I think it works pretty well. I think it'll just, that, if I change the laptop, it'll go to that box and then it'll auto select which one.
Well, from what I remember, they're like at least 4 inches. Because HDMI 3 and HDMI 4 and HDMI 4 is that cable.
Oh, this is HDMI 4. Of course that's HDMI.
Yeah,
used to be the other one.
yeah, and I was there, and at the time on Sunday there, I was there having a heart attack because HDMI came up on the screen here, it's HDMI 3, I'm like, no signal, there's something wrong. And eventually it cycled through HDMI 4.
Sorry, I think it's picking up the wrong No, that is your screen. No, just hold on. Just leave it. Just leave it. That wasn't your back. It is my back. Oh, but it wasn't the screen. That's not my screen. Don't worry about it. You'd have fun. Trust me, you'd have fun. You're the man. And now, see, what I do is, all my slideshows, I have my notes. Because I can't remember squat. And so I never use notes. If you were here on Sunday, you saw me on every slide go back and at least glance at the stuff I said. And I use that to remember what the heck did I want to say on this slide. So they use the presenter view to figure out what you're doing. And it gives you this view up here for all the
Is the site that you monitor more? How long have they monitored? Or since they went on for? That used to be SARA Conference.
I'm a retired Navy navigator.
So you know that Omega.
Omega. You have to know where you're at. Know where you're at.
Yeah. So they shut down Dallas.
We do have a listserv. We do.
So they put that one back on as
When I was doing this back then, I mechanically learned how to get my fix. And
did Omega work for you? I mean, I saw it when it first came out.
You had to know what latitude you were at in strips, right? Because what it did is it gave
matches for all these curves and they read out two numbers or something.
And you had to know that you were in this area, and then you get a good fix. But if you were off by that amount, you can also get a good fix north of you, 20 or 30 miles. Right? So you had to know approximately where you were. We never had a problem with that. The submariner, we didn't have a problem, but all I remember is it took a long time to get a fix with Omega. We had Loran Omega, I had transit satellite with them.
I saw one, I guess,
in HB 9020, right? And I was taking celestial fixes out of the periscope. I sit there going, trying to find the North Star. Okay, here it is. What's the angle? We have a little angle we can go up or down slightly, and I can say, okay, here's the angle I got. Quartermaster entered that into the HB 9020 and came out with this giant fix. We were within 20 miles. So I was taking those in my periscope. Very little things there, because you're basically taking the angle of the mirror looking up there. Lots I remember
and all that data goes to the incredible standard, get together and with computers process the data and look at the
11.2 or something.
inside the data was track everything.
Giant 24. So they use a giant contactor to shut everything off.
Things we discussed, we had a semi-official discussion there on Zoom on, or that was maybe an official request to do anything. So, grabbed my notes, see I've got a book right here. This is the Secretary's record book. And Ed takes it over the next year. You can just write his, make another thing with his name on it and keep the same book copy. Unless he confirms it. For the board meeting last which I try to go over, so I'll review the whole thing after before I Anyway.
Hey, good. That extra receiver you gave me? The extra receiver? Yeah, you gave me to,
You're calling K5 TV. Time.
Yeah, give me a
total depth.
Yeah.
Or total disaster.
That's awful.
Disaster. Okay, well, first thing was.
First thing, Ham license.
I don't remember doing that.
And agenda.
I'd like to give it easier in Tennessee to write on
Where do they look these also?
Tennessee.
Sometimes the agenda changes fairly late and the hang back is only fairly early. But you can have at least a preliminary of it, which would be mostly correct, which is overnight.
Now, also, with email addresses
So that's an all attendance. Everybody's attendance. Yeah, the other issue was
even sitting here, for example, Tom, I can't understand anything he said.
Okay, yeah, that's
That's wrong with it.
Glance at the screen and then go back to the audience. You gotta know what's on the screen so you'll work.
That's what it's
Somebody gets on there, they post these and obviously something to advertise. They're trying to sell it on Radio Joe or things like that and it's really nice to be in a place where Every other year, change out. I think president or vice president are on one team. But Haley Hood, behind officers, next year, sometime who would, and the board of directors are all 2 years. And if you get a sense of continuity, you don't want to have something where you could just dump all your officers. So have no so that has to, they get down that Okay, Don.
Russell's rounding out here with, all right, sunset, sunrise, spirit variation. Yes.
Okay. Thanks to Dennis and to Ed, who are not here. The ballot count, Secretary Bruce Randall, Treasurer Bill Dean, Director Wayne McCain, Charles Osborne, Director at Large John Wallace, Stuart Rumling. If anyone is concerned about the vote and would like to count themselves, you always have that option. So just see me, we'll send you a sign.
Yeah, can't I count it and make sure maybe Ed won?
How many ballots?
You know, the only thing I can say is there was an odd number of ballots because at one point we were thinking about handing out baseball bats to 2 of the people in the room.
I got the reach.
What would you swear?
All right. First, I want to thank Bill not only for the Eclipse Mob stuff, which gave a lot of the history of what I'm going to talk about, but also he read my paper last night at breakfast. He said, "Hey, you got a formula problem." I went, "Yeah, I do." So I fixed it. All right. While I was sitting here listening to elections results, I was fixing the problem. So thanks, Bill, for that. And so the purpose of this was that I've been doing the AFSO. I'm one of those guys who joined because of supersets. Okay, I'm one of them. That's why I was sitting there going, "Boy, I'm doing it." So about a year and a half ago, I joined. The AFSO guys recruited me because I was in Colorado Springs, and I knew the guy. He's actually part of the Space Exploration Site.
So that's the Variable Star organization?
American Association of Variable Star Observers.
Okay, so you're just adding one more star to your observation list.
Well, they've been doing this. I think they've got 50, a huge number of years of data for all this stuff, including sunspots. They've been having sunspot observers, and they've been using supersids for years, or supersid type things for years, and they've got a database of all the supersid data. Okay, and they're also doing, and so I'm one of the observers. You get an official observer number, and you report in to Rodney Howe, who's in Longmont, and you report in once a month all your results, and where all the flares are and all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing this for a year and a half or so. I got all the collected data of supersids for one of the sites for a year. So now the question is, question I came up with is, well, what happens when you got an eclipse? It's not going to look like a flare, but you've got other effects that SuperSIDS collects that nobody ever uses, right? And everybody that does SuperSIDS, you see this great big nighttime, growth of signal, and then it goes down to nothing unless you got a flare. Well, here I'm not even caring about the flares. I don't care about any of the sun activity. I care about what happens when it looks like it's going from night to day in an eclipse. And we got a huge variation in SuperSIDS. So I'm going to show you the results. I went through a bunch of trying to figure out what I could use. So I'm going to show you how all that results and what I finally came up with. And then my predictions, which Bill sort of confirmed because I never saw that one report, but it looks just like what Bill showed on his. But I came up with a totally different way and using SuperSIDS data. Okay, so the goal is I want to show what SuperSIDS is going to look like during the eclipse. Okay, I've got my SuperSIDS, been running for a year or so, and I'm going to predict that this is what I'm actually going to see on my SuperSIDS. Okay, and I figure that you guys will, if I'm wrong, you guys will forget that I ever did it. And if I'm right, I'll go into folk legend or something. I haven't figured it out. Right? But I'm hoping you guys, the forgetful one works too. Okay, so I've got my year data, and then I'm going to use the predicted start-stop times of the eclipse. And then I'm going to go, the way I'm going to do it is, there's sunrise and sunset, historic rise and fall times from my data. Now, anybody that does SuperSIDS will realize that at sunset, the signal just like goes up and it stays up, and then sunrise, signal goes down to almost nothing and stays that way unless you got some kind of a solar event. Okay? So the key here was that sunrise and sunset, what if we just had the eclipse there? How would we get a signal just by assuming the eclipse? Okay, so that's the goal, and I have all the historic data for a year, and I'm still collecting it, so I'm going to basically make another chart in August, as soon as right before the eclipse, because that'll be closest to real time. So I'm going to show you the geometry of where that is, and then I'm going to calculate the overall rates of sunrise and sunset, and then I'm going to I developed a model that shows the shadowing effect and how I apply that shadowing effect against the race. And then I come up with a chart. You see this from Bill's thing, is that yes, the eclipse will cause an effect at 1440 kilohertz. I have not seen one at, some people have done it at the other frequencies. So we assume that it can happen, all right, it will have an effect. Okay, this is my system at home, that's my antenna, and this is my, when you buy PVC in bulk and and you're trying to put together a radio joke and a SuperSIDS, you tend to make things, and I've got a lot of wire. I love this little thing here, it's like a little snuff can, plug it into your computer, and then I love the output, the little spectrum analysis, and then plots and stuff like that. There's also the system that runs my AMSAT system, so I just have it running in parallel. Okay, so just to fill everybody in, the system that what SuperSIDS does is it takes these VLF broadcast stations, and you can see them, you can actually put them in the system and then start recording the data on them. The one I'm looking at here is Lemoore. I've been monitoring Lemoore for about 15 months, and so I've got data, and that's been my best station. Okay, Lemoore, North Dakota. Okay, it's 25.2 kilohertz. It's a pretty strong broadcast station, etc. Okay, so this is what a SuperSIDS day looks like. At sunset, we'll start here. At sunset, you get this nice, slow increase, and you get a lot of big variability here. And then at sunrise, it drops down really fast. You get a couple humps. I always see these characteristic humps. and you get a little hump in the middle during the day. Now this has no flares. This is a nice clean day. And believe it or not, for once, I'm looking for a nice clean day. I don't want days with events in it, all right? But normally everybody forgets all this stuff because this is on the other side of the earth. The sun's on the other side of the earth during this period. So the circumcised guys really don't care, all right? They care about this part when the sun's up and they're looking for the flares that will cause these nice little increases and shark fin kind of approaches. So what I was looking at is, hey, I've got this, the sun sets, and I get this increase here. Well, eclipse, maybe that's the same effect I'll get on the ionosphere during the eclipse. So why don't I measure the slope here, and then at sunrise, boom, it doesn't take much of sun to sit there and make that thing drop to nothing. So I'm going to take the rate, the average rate at sunrise, and then I'm going to go figure out, based on shadowing, the eclipse shadowing over time, what that all adds up to be, and then predict. Okay? So that's the approach. Right, I got all this data to prove it. So what I did is I basically picked out sunrise and sunset times. I figured out all the rates for a number of months. And, I'm just sort of showing you a bunch of charts here, so don't worry about it. This is my control chart. This is the sunrise rates. Sunrise gives you a very negative drop. What I was looking for is a pattern. Is it always the same? And it's obviously not. So every month there is a different sunrise and fall rate. All right? So it's not very consistent, but it's somewhere around, there's the mean, one standard deviation on each side, and you got some bumps here, right? So I couldn't just say pick a number, but I do have a mean here of 15, and these are just units, so they're not calibrated or anything like that. This is just my system and the units it's coming up with. So about down 15,000 on that.
Question?
Yeah.
What latitude do you live at?
I'm at 38.5. All right, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Okay, sunset is about the same thing, a little less variability here, but you can tell every month. Well, this is January. This is the January. I'm sorry. These are the daily charts. The daily charts, you got a lot of average issues. Okay. So I was trying to think, well, maybe everything's the same. But when you see the following charts, you'll understand they're all not. Okay. So what I decided to do is I'm going to take a series of months, and I'm going to just take the overall average and standard deviation for a number of months of the data I've got. Okay, so this is the average rise rate. For sunset, it's actually a rise. Sunrise is actually a quick drop. And you see sort of the difference. This is about 5 times faster drop than there is a rise. Okay, so the sunset comes up, it drops 5 times more on average than it does. It builds up slowly and then it drops very fast during sunrise. Then I was looking for is there a pattern in what's this, monthly? This is all monthly, right? So the monthly rise and fall rates. This actually might be that, I don't know why. We had a large variability in 2016. Then it actually smoothed out here in 2017, the early parts of 2017. So I'm not sure exactly why I did that, but I like the fact that I'm smoother here and I didn't have all this variability on that. So I was trying to figure out, can I use that, right? And I don't know. Okay, so here, I know this is pretty ugly, but this is all the plots. I tried to pick out at least one a month of the daily plots, okay? So this is, obviously sunset goes up here. This is how much variability you got, of all the months where all this data comes from. And then you'll see these quick drops. And I'll show you some other plots. These quick drops here,
it always drops very fast. Even from way up here, it'll drop down there in nothing time. And then you got really flat here again. Some of these bumps are actually caused by flares and things like that. I was trying to pick the data that did not have flares for once. And so you see that it's really low here. And there's not much level change here, believe it or not. I've really got it sort of zoomed in. Then what I was looking at is, well, you know, the other problem you've got, and you'll see it sort of here, is the months are, the daytime, nighttime durations are different. All right? I've got shorter days and shorter nights, you know, or longer nights and longer days, depending on the day of the month. So that's also going to change. And I'm just saying, was there a variation? In August, am I going to have a faster rise or a faster drop because I've got a longer or shorter day? All right, and so I was trying to figure that out, so I brought those numbers in, and I started to calculate the sunset, sunrise, and the durations, and then, you know, sort of plot them against there. And I didn't find much correlation, but you can actually see the durations here. This is May, 10 hours here, and it goes to 9, and then it comes back to 10, and it goes to 12, 13, 14, 14, and then it starts going back down, and it goes back, you know. So the durations would cause the whole thing to shrink and then have more, I guess, more rate to get up and down, and then some are wider. All right, so I figured that would cause some duration issues. But if you look at when I plot that against duration, it's all over the map, right? So you got this nice little thing here. So I couldn't find a pattern there either that I could predict. All right. So what I basically did was, and then the next thing I was saying, hey, can I choose? I've got the August 21st data. Will it correlate in 2016? Will it correlate with August 21st, 2017? So what I did do is I had the May data. So I put two May charts together, same day, and they don't look like they match too much either. All right, so you really can't correlate Mays together just by the day. All right, so there is a variation here. What you will see is, look at that. That's almost exact slope there. This is a little different here, but that decrease there looks pretty consistent, even though it started at a higher rate. The rate is what I was interested in. I'm interested in the rate of that line. This line here, not the same. Okay, so sunrise looks like it's going to be pretty good here, but sunset maybe not as good a prediction. So I'm still using the averages in my final calculation. This sort of all this was showing me is I should have made these diagram things smaller. I'm still learning that from December. But these things, even the sunset rates, just zoomed in, you can see how they change every month. They take a little longer. This is obviously the shorter days. These are the longer days. They just take longer, and there are different slopes going up. Sunset, look at those. Sunset, just the opposite. The long days over here, and then they're almost exactly the same. The rates are almost exactly the same. So I'm still liking the sunrise stuff. There's some physics that's happening there that is very looks like you can actually predict it if I knew how to do it. All right. Really quick on the eclipse basics. What we're looking for is this umbra here that's going to cross the U.S. We're also the penumbra, which is a percentage of the shadow of the moon. All of that looks like, to the ionosphere in this localized area, sunrise and sunset. Okay? The question is, does it really have that much effect? Is this going to, how much of the ionosphere is actually needed to cause the superseds to react the way it does? And does a simple lunar eclipse do it, or is that just not enough area covered by the Earth? Okay, so that's really one of the questions we're going to answer in this thing. I'm not going to answer it, but if my prediction comes true, then this is the only area affected by the ionosphere in normal times, and so
If not, my guess is that you need more of the Earth ionosphere to affect the supersonics. That makes sense? You know, it's either a localized effect or it's a full Earth effect, and we can tell by if I don't get enough of a signal change like I'm predicting, that means that more ionosphere has to be set, or you know, or sunrise or sunset against that to make it happen. All right, so that's one of the sort of things you do. The nice thing about the fact that I've been monitoring the station is here's Colorado Springs, here's Lemoore, and here's the path of the penumbra, or the umbra. Right through there, right? Almost halfway in between. So and by the way, we've got guys in Fort Collins, we've got the ABSO guys have guys all over here. Okay, so and there's a couple guys that are actually going to get under here with a supersys station. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of data to pick up. But the fact that I am not going to touch my system, and I told my wife, do not hang any clothes on it, you know, on the 21st, all right? She tends to dry things on my antennas for some reason. So we're going to have all that, and I'm going to have data now. I'll just get the data, and it'll be like any other day, hopefully. And we don't have anything else major happening, I lose my data. So there's a lot of guys here I can collect data from if I don't get one.
So where is your location? Where is?
I'm in Colorado Springs.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay.
And then there's the path. There's the Lemoore, and that thing's going right in between us, which is I think.
So that should show the effect if there is one.
Right. I mean, just saying, I can't get the geometry any better by chance. So by chance, I'm in the right location. I've been monitoring the right station for this event. All right. So luck.
So you're going to set up your super SID station and then head north with an optical telescope?
No, it's been set up for a year.
Yeah, okay.
I've been here for a year. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to touch the thing. I'm going to let it collect data because I've already got a year's of data.
Mm-hmm.
But is Pat, see, what I'm looking for is that is reflecting off the ionosphere and hitting me. Right? Yeah. So if the ionosphere, if this is the localized area that the ionosphere is affecting, that should change the reflection right there. And I should get a different effect.
So you're going to get a little bit of nighttime almost mid-path.
Right, exactly what's happening. And instead of the whole night covering there, I'm going to get a localized night right potentially where the reflection angle is. And that is sort of the key.
Maybe you'll have two nights, actually. When the pre-umbra starts across you, maybe you'll see some effect.
Semi-night.
Okay, well, wait a minute. So actually, all I care about is the pre-umbra, because I only got 2 minutes of umbra. Okay? I'm showing you the entire, from the moment I get limb to limb, I'm showing that all the way to the end. So that's the prediction, is all the way, the entire effect. Because you only got 2 minutes. In fact, I ignore the 2 minutes because it would have taken a little more advanced math than I had to add that 2 minutes, because it means the moon's a little closer than equal. So we're 2 minutes, it's close to the orbit. And by the way, we're losing an inch a year or something like that because the moon's going out. All right, so there'll be a point when we don't have a full solar eclipse here. I keep telling this to my astronomy students. So you're just not going to tell your kids that they used to have solar eclipses. All right, Casper, Wyoming is the closest point that they had a prediction for. So I converted that to UDT, and then I moved it down the trace to where that line crossed, right? So basically, I predicted, I used the Casper prediction that NASA gave me, and then I moved down and said, okay, that's approximate time it's going to actually hit me. All right, so I sort of made that time correction. Okay, now, a little bit about the math. You got the sun, and you got the moon crossing. So the question is, I'm interested in the percentage of the sun that is now covered by the moon. All right, so you got full sun, and then this thing's moving this way, and it is now covering a percentage of the sun as it's moving here until it hits full circle. And this is where I fudged a little bit, and I said, to get 2 minutes here, I have to make this a little bit bigger, math that a nightmare, it's a nightmare now, so I basically so I ignored the 2 minutes. And then I come here, you get full eclipse, and then it starts coming out, and then you start opening up stuff here. And then you start getting fundamentally sunrise effect, okay? The question is, how did that all work? All right, did some math, and this is where Bill, thank goodness, reads papers, and I'm so happy somebody reads my paper. He actually found that I didn't carry my 2 here, so I carried a 2, and I actually recalculated everything just this morning, actually during while you're voting here. So, okay, and actually my old one, if you see the paper, this thing's a little fatter here, but this is the new percentage. So this is percentage of the sun covered during the eclipse from the start of limb to limb to the end of limb to limb. Okay, and this is full eclipse. Okay, this is the percentage of the sun. Why am I doing that? Because I'm going to take that percentage and couple it with the rate change of rise or fall, and I'm going to come up with what the signal is going to look like and the levels. Okay, but first let me go back to, remember all those charts I was saying with the rise and fall? I took the May data and I just basically plugged it into the start of the eclipse, and then I brought the rise time and I took to the end of the eclipse, and I just plugged these 2 together, right? So I took the data, I had the data, the raw data, and I plugged these 2 together. So this is my, quote, historical prediction chart. And and all I did was I moved my sunset data right up to the point where it met my sunrise data, and I made a plot. So theoretically, if you didn't have any other information, you'd be tying the sunrise and sunset data together until they met, and that'd be it, okay? So from that perspective, it's 0 here, 0 here. Full eclipse, you'd see a rise past full eclipse until the about this point, and then it'll drop right back down to 0 again in time for the end of the limb crossing. Okay, so if you get, this is not correct, but this is how you would normally do it if you had no other data. So I use this as perspective that it might look like that, unless you do my this other approach. Okay, this is all my percent sun. You take the rates and then combine them with that, you get a curve like that, and this is the actual level of the data that you'll see. And right here is the full eclipse, and I will get the max signal at full eclipse, and then almost immediately, within 2 to 3 minutes, it drops almost to nothing. Sunrise has such an effect that it doesn't take much of the limb to cover it until the thing drops to nothing. Yeah.
How coarse is the data that you're collecting?
It is not. It's very well.
Seconds or parts of a second?
I think it's seconds.
I think it's 5 seconds per sample.
Okay, whatever the standard features. Yeah.
5 seconds.
I've been collecting it the standard. So yeah, I've got a lot of really detailed data. Yeah.
There's a possibility you may not get anything.
Oh,
I realize that because it all depends how much the ionosphere is in. Is Lamore going to be in the D layer or the E layer when it's in the daylight? Your balance for your RF signal will bounce over you as it goes to the D and E, hits the ground, then hits the
okay. All right,
you're way up in the F.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's exactly the issue. All right. The question is that I expect it to be here. By the way, we're pretty much into the day here, right? When it happens. This is actually my May data, and then I plug in right at this point here and at this point here. I plug in my historical model, where I basically tie the end here to the top here. That's actually what I did. I took that and I went there, and I took that and I went there, and I tied them together. So that's that chart there, right? This is the actual predicted data here, and you can see that I will be 0 here historically on August 21st.
okay? And I should have 0 signal, right? So, if the ionosphere is affected locally, right in between me and Lemoore, and that's where the bounce is happening, then I should get the bump. If it's not, and that's not where it's reflecting, and none of the penumbra and everything affects the ionosphere, or I need more of the ionosphere, I will get nothing or smaller.
Yeah, each frequency will be different.
Well, this, historically I've been getting this night and day, right? Right, so we'll see. So, yeah.
Have you identified other people along the path of the eclipse from one coast to the other who might be able to take similar data and possibly get a number of points along the path which might have varying exposure to the penumbra and the different activities of the ionospheric layers that could kind of flesh this out somewhat geographically?
Right. We've got the AFSO group who is doing the monthly stuff is all over that. We've got about 15 members doing that.
In various positions all over the country?
I don't know the variation yet. We're trying to get more. Trust me, we're trying to get more. And anybody who's super citizen wants to play, will definitely take your data.
Because I'm not really experienced with super citizen or anything, but I live in Washington State, in Seattle, and I'm planning on traveling to Salem, Oregon for the eclipse on August 21st.
If you had a super citizen and you were underneath the eclipse, I'd love to see that data.
Well, I'd love to have a super citizen to do that. And I don't know, I don't really much about all of super citizen, but I'd like to be able to be part of this because Blooming Laos just spoke to me about having a hackathon for the super citizen data on Western Conference next year, and it should be a very interesting sort of thing to put this into that.
Right. Oh, I think it's going to be great. I 100% agree with that. And by the way, we'll have all that data. Hopefully I have that data August 22nd, and I'm going to turn my phones off and everything. All right, so let me zoom in a little bit here. So,
on this. We're focusing on the eclipse study from the perspective that everybody is thinking in totality and all that that's going on. But won't we have partial effects like this in the ionosphere that just don't intersect the Earth, like day before, day after? In other words, the ionosphere gets hit.
Well, and I was thinking about that. There are total eclipses all the time on the Earth, and penumbras all the time on the Earth.
Yeah.
The only reason we're getting attention here is it's in the U.S., right? And so the question is if we actually watched SuperSids and we actually looked at the big chart of eclipses going on, solar eclipses, maybe some of those, quote, flares were really solar eclipses down somewhere else in the ionosphere that was affecting some area that was causing the bounce to change.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking the geometry may not even require that anything intersect the Earth.
I agree.
That the ionosphere would actually be affected by an eclipse that is.
I absolutely agree. And that's the fun part of this thing, is I'm just getting to the point where I'm just worried about a simple reflection potential. But yeah, it may not have any effect at all, and it really is because I really need the eclipse farther north or farther south or east or west to make, because that's really where the balance is happening or something.
I'm thinking you may see effects other days on either side of it.
Could be. Could be.
A comment. During the sunrise and sunset, those particular features are caused by the atmosphere raising, but also are caused by interference between the signal reflected by the ionosphere and the ground wave. So one expectation for me would be, and actually we see that in many charts, that the slope for each particular installation is different. So mine is probably faster than yours. It has.
It would be different, yeah.
So I think your presentation here is exclusively for your installation.
Absolutely.
Other people may experience different.
If they've not been collecting data before and after, then we probably can't. I can't put their chart on top of mine and say that. But theoretically, if they have the right geometry, they should see a bump.
if they were, but they would see it at different rates, right? And depending on their geometry and their signal strength and all that kind of stuff, they will see at different rates, but they should see a bump if they've got the right geometry. I think that's the key. That's why I don't have, I mean, I'm not worried about actual levels here or actual rates. I'm worried about that I should get a rate, a slow increase, and then a total drop. But I should see something.
Why did you use the historical data for this, prediction? Because you should, in my opinion, use the current ionosphere composition and...
Because I only had up to May when I made the paper, and you guys made me put the paper so far ahead, I used May. That's the reason I used May.
If it was me, I would use the yesterday data, because that's... I am
going to update this thing August 20th, or at least when I after August 21st, I'm going to put all the data together, and you're right. I mean, August 20th is the best chart to use to predict August 21st. All right, I was even trying last year. That's why I went through all that imagination. Can I use last year's August 21st to predict this year's August 21st? No. All right, none of that whole history actually worked. So I almost had to use the latest data I had, which was the May data, that didn't have any flares or anything, by the way. And then basically, that's actually just tying two together, and you can see why that doesn't work, right? Because actually, here is where the effect happens. As soon as that sun comes out of the total eclipse, it just makes that ionosphere go away, or it drops. And you'll get such a quick drop here that it'll go right back down to that level. I left it down here just to show the effect, but it'll go right that level, and you may not even see that if you don't have enough.
Is all of the drop due to delayer absorption?
I don't know 100% why. It's just like it appears to be almost the same rate, no matter what month, what effect on the drop on sunrise. If you look at it, that's sort of the thing that was so interesting to me, is that it did all these rates. Those are all different months, but look at it; they're almost exactly the same. The rate is exactly the same. Sunrise or sunset, all over the map, right? All over the map, and so that means that when the sun sets, then there's just different effects. De-ionizing, I guess, is what you're saying, because it's basically deionization. And then, but sunrise, man, it just vastly ionizes.
Well, I'd like to mention that possibly some of these variations you're seeing has to do with your location. I live in Tulsa. And I've been recording these for a long time also. Generally speaking, the falls are identical, yes, like you said.
Okay.
But I'm also finding the rises are almost identical.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just
I
geometry.
don't see that slow rise that you showed there, ever.
Here's another thing. I've got Pikes Peak. I got sunset on Pikes Peak, right? So during the year, it either goes this side of sunset of Pikes Peak, and which means I've got 10,000 feet quicker sunset, or it's over here on the other side of the mountain, or one side of the mountain, and it takes a longer to sunset.
And I don't have
maybe it's the mountain that's doing it.
So I don't have any mountains at all. And I see much more
this might
rapid
be
top.
mountain effect on sunset.
Good way to test that, instead of using a little more, pick other stations and then look how the waves look.
Yeah.
And you'll probably see a difference.
I'm pretty sure I will. I really didn't have. This is crunchy data. I didn't want to do more than one station. But yeah, we took all my. See, I had all the data. I could do a lot of it. Yeah.
Time.
Oh, time. Okay. Last but not least, so what I'm going to do here is. All right. So we're going to increase at the beginning of the eclipse, the picture is. You'll either remember me you will not remember me, or I'll be a folk legend, is what my goal is. Yes, sir.
Do you have any contingency plan? Because the North Dakota station may go off on that day. Do you have anything? You got Andy's.
A letter to my Congress.
One thing I've noticed is that NAA does go off regularly on Monday. So I think they keep this one on as a rule.
Well, I don't yet. NML is consistent on
And I
this
think
day.
it goes off on Tuesdays. But
Right. NAA is off during the eclipse, unless they do something different, just like your one, right? So I'm okay with that. I'm recording 3 other stations, and the observer group is recording other stations. But I will not. This is the only station I've got really good data on, and if it goes away, then I will not be a full pleasure. So I mean, you can only do so much, yeah.
Just one other thing, with regard to the loop, I get much better results with an inverted L.
With what?
With an inverted L, essentially.
Oh, nice.
Much more signal from Lemoore than with the loop. And I
How big is your L?
have 400 turn, 5 foot square loop.
What's the size of the L?
What's the size of the L? This gentleman was asking what the size of your L?
30 feet by about
All right, thank you.
25.
Is it 30 by 25?
Take it away, Jack.
I'm sorry, I missed it. So you have an L?
Okay, so I'm going to talk today about some work I've done in measuring the cosmic microwave background. And to me, it's not that important with regard to exactly what it is or my apparatus. I'm going to try to explain what the principles are to build such an apparatus. And I really feel that the cosmic microwave background is the most ubiquitous signal in the universe.
Hey guys, if you're going to talk, take it outside.
It comes from every direction, and even though it comes from the beginning of the time, it's really not as weak as you would think. So I think that everybody in the amateur community should at least know what the cosmic microwave background is and how yes? Yeah. And exactly how you would go about measuring it. So this goes way back to the beginning of the 1900s. And, this gentleman over here, Lemaitre, was an astronomer, and he realized that the universe was expanding, and that he also studied Einstein's equations of relativity, and he could see that relativity would allow the existence of a singularity. That is to say, all the matter in the universe can exist in a single place. And Einstein told him, well, the mathematics is right, but the physics is crazy. This can't possibly be true. And Edwin Hubble was looking at the spectra of the galaxies and saw that the galaxies he observed were redshifted, that is to say they were moving away, and they were moving away in every direction. So he didn't actually say that if they're all moving away in every direction, there must have been a time when they were all pushed together in a little ball. That was what Lemaitre said. Later on in the 1940s, people actually studied what might happen if all the matter in the universe was in a single place and there was some sort of a Big Bang. There was some discussion. George Gamow, the physicist, did some calculations, and he showed that if all the matter in the universe was in one place, the strength of that explosion would cause the atoms to arrange themselves such that the hydrogen-helium ratio that would emerge from that explosion would be the hydrogen-helium ratio in space that we know today, which was a fair degree of evidence that there was an explosion at one time. And, but these two gentlemen here, Alpha and Herman, they were Gamows graduate students. They thought about what might happen as this fireball expanded. And they came up with the following explanation for what might have went on. So the Big Bang had occurred at some particular point. At that time, they really didn't know how far in the past it was. But they made some calculations about what would happen to this cloud of gas as it expanded. And it started out extremely hot, just really, really hot, and all of the particles were separated. They were a plasma made up of positive and negative particles that had not yet recombined. And this would expand over a period of time, and some hundreds of thousands of years later, as they cooled, they would finally get to a point where it would get cool enough, which is about 3,000 degrees Kelvin, for the positive and the negative charges to recombine to form, the protons and the electrons would recombine to form hydrogen gas. Now it turns out this plasma has the property that it absorbs all light. So if the plasma is hot, it's glowing, but the light can't escape from the plasma. So the universe consisted of this giant plasma that was glowing at 3,000 degrees Kelvin. It glows as yellow in color. And then a period of time, at around 380,000 years after the first Big Bang, this recombination would occur. And suddenly the universe would become transparent because hydrogen atoms don't absorb light. So you can make a diagram like this, and this is the diagram that puts this in the realm of amateur radio astronomers. Here we are looking back in time. This is the entire universe. And 13.8 billion years ago, the universe blew up. We look back in time, and we see a yellow glow. So all the way farther than the farthest galaxy, the sky would glow yellow. But when you look back in time, there's a redshift. Redshift is enormous. It goes back to the beginning of time. It's redshift is Z equals 1100. So that yellow light that comes to us is redshifted to the microwave. And that's the cosmic microwave background that comes from the Big Bang. It starts out as the, oops, wrong way. It starts out as this glowing plasma. It recombines at 3,000 degrees Kelvin. It becomes transparent when it recombines, so we can look back and we can see the fireball, but the fireball is redshifted from yellow light to the microwave. So that was pretty much the understanding in the 40s and the 50s. It was very hotly debated. The steady state theory was essentially discredited by observations that were made along these lines. And then there were these two engineers at Bell Laboratories who, at the time, were interested in looking at the sky and seeing how much background noise there was in the microwave. Just like Jansky, his antennas out there, they said to Jansky, go down there and start tuning around and see if there's any noise. And of course he did find noise, and the noise originated from our galaxy. So years had gone by, and now we could go to much higher frequency, up into the gigahertz range, and they said to these two guys, go out there and see if you can find any noise. And they had this set up, this dish antenna, this, what's it called?
Horn. Hoghorn.
Yeah. No, it's got a specific
Hoghorn. Hog.
Yeah.
Horn.
And so they had that. They also had a maser amplifier in there that was about the quietest front end that you could have. And they tuned around and they found that 4.08 gigahertz, which is where they were set up to listen to radio signals, that there was a noise signal that they couldn't account for. And when Jansky looked at the original noise that he had found, he found that it rose and set every day with our galaxy. They found that this noise came from all directions. And so they didn't really understand where it came from. And in Princeton, New Jersey, quite nearby, close in New Jersey, Robert Dickey at Princeton University had decided also to look for this noise, but for the purpose of finding the leftover noise from the Big Bang. And he had equipment, but it was not as quiet as the equipment that these people at Bell Labs had, so he hadn't successfully found it yet. Some people who had seen a lecture by one of his graduate students said that Robert Dickey should call up Penzias and maybe talk about it a little bit. And Penzias described what he found, and Dickey said, well, you found the leftover cosmic microwave background from the Big Bang. And so they published 2 papers in the same journal. One, these people described the observation that they had made, and Dickey had discussed his explanation for that. So to get everybody on the same temperature scale here, I won't say everybody on the same wavelength, let's just go through this for a second so everybody understands the relative temperatures of things. So it's going to turn out that those observations found out that the cosmic background was 2.73 kelvins above absolute zero, which is extraordinarily cold. Okay, and they used as a reference point when they made that measurement the temperature at which liquid helium boils, which is 4.2 Kelvin. Okay, various mixtures of different isotopes of liquid helium can be brewed up to make this temperature, this calibration temperature, at a slightly different temperature. Now, liquid nitrogen boils at 77 degrees Kelvin. You don't say degrees, you say 77 kelvins. Liquid nitrogen boils at 77 kelvins. And 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, is at 273. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how I build an instrument where I can use a calibration point to calibrate my apparatus to observe this 2.73 and see how close I can get. Okay? All right? So now another little bit of physics here. We're going to talk about black body radiators because that plasma that was heated and it was a perfect absorber is a black body. And without going through all the physics, but we're going to talk quite a bit about it, there's a distribution of wavelengths of energy that are emitted by a heated object, whatever temperature it is. And in the case of a perfect absorber, if I have a perfect absorber that's heated to a certain temperature and it emits radiation, that pattern of radiation can be calculated from the laws of physics. It's very specific. So the sun, which is at 6,000 Kelvin, has this pattern of radiation which peaks in the visible. And as we get cooler and cooler, the peak of the pattern of radiation moves further and further towards the red. So infrared is emitted by the objects in this room. And that's how IR glasses work. Even with the lights out, you are emitting energy, and it can be detected by IR glasses. And if the object is really cold, it glows at microwave wavelengths. Okay, so in Dickey's lab, there was a young fellow by the name of Jim Peebles who had been going around for quite some time discussing this theory about the fireball and the radiation. And he wasn't even aware of Alfred and Herman's work. They published in some other physics journal. But he discussed this theory widely, and he was responsible really for popularizing the idea that the cosmic microwave background that was observed was associated with the Big Bang. So now Penzias and Wilson made one measurement at 4 gigahertz. And Peebles used to go around to physics meetings and show this slide and say, well, you can clearly see that this is 3K background radiation, and this is from the beginning of the universe. And people laughed at him, okay? But then the Princeton folks, they had their own apparatus. And this is their apparatus on the roof of what was then the physics building. Now it's the geology building. And this is Wilkinson, when he was a graduate student. And they made a measurement. And then there was 2 points. Well, this started to really convince people that there may be something going on, and this explanation was really the explanation. Now, the interesting thing about it is, around about this time, Penzias and Wilson got a Nobel Prize for their discovery of the radiation, but not the explanation, because they had no explanation. But there was no doubt that there was that radiation. So they were given the Nobel Prize for that. Smoot, a couple of years, many years later, got a Nobel Prize for the explanation and the additional data that he found. So anyway, this was, this is 4 gigahertz and that was 10 gigahertz. Okay, so people got together, they went down to NASA and they said, well, we'll build a satellite, we'll go up above the atmosphere where we don't have to worry about absorption, and this was the outcome of that from that first satellite. And what it shows here is the observations of the satellite, plus all the other, the Princeton observations and all sorts of other observations, when put together, define this black body curve. And it is exactly a black body curve to a very, very high degree of accuracy of a black body of about 2.73 Kelvin, radiating out into space in all directions. So that's the story of how we got to where we are today. Now, it peaks at around 160 gigahertz. The original measurements were done at 4, and then 10, and then the satellite got additional data, and they found that it peaks at 160 gigahertz. So that's the problem that we have. The question is, how are we, mere mortals, here at sea level, not in a balloon room, and not in space, is there some sort of a way that we can make a detection that can convince us that we've seen that radiation as well? So I want to say something about this. I found in the process of trying to learn how to make this measurement that the stuff in the popular press is extraordinarily misleading. And we'll discuss a lot of these things when it comes to designing an instrument of this kind. This is the thing that you see in sky and telescope. Okay, I just want to remind everybody that the temperature scale for these fluctuations are extremely important and tell us a lot about the beginning of time. But they've been magnified so that from red to blue, it's 1/10,000th of a Kelvin. We're not going to get that with used amplifiers, okay? But the thing is, it tends to lead you to believe that that's what you're going to see, and you're not. So if you came here because you want to see this, go to dinner early. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the design and construction of this thing. So, as I just said, I found over time when I started doing this, I've been working on this for a couple of years, that it's extremely difficult to find out what the exact principles are that you need to understand in order to build a machine like this. There's a lot of these questions that you might have. And if you go to the Astrophysical Journal, where the professional scientists and astronomers have published, they have all these instruments that are designed on the basis of this, but they seldom talk about why it is that it has to be that way. So the story here is about how I found out about all of this information and then was able to design something that I could use to make this measurement. So some of the questions you have is, how big is the antenna? If you're gonna find microwave radiation from the beginning of time, you probably needed a 200-foot dish. And it turns out you don't. So, and what do I measure? What am I going to measure? Am I going to measure a voltage? Do I measure a wattage? What am I going to measure? And how good does the receiver have to be? Do I need a $10,000 preamp, or can I do this with something cheaper? And what is the frequency range that I could use at sea level? What bandwidth? How much amplification do I need? And how do I calibrate it? Because obviously I'm looking for a microwave radiation that's 2.73 Kelvin, okay? And how do I calibrate that? And a really difficult problem is, does the atmosphere interfere with the measurement? Okay, so let's just go through this. But basically what we're trying to do is we're like the original measurement, we're going to pick a frequency and we're going to get some sort of an amplitude of some microwaves, and we're going to say, aha, that one measurement tells me that I saw the cosmic microwave background. Okay, so the answer to the first question, thank God, is that size does not matter. All right? And it's a very simple reason. It's the second law of thermodynamics. But I can give you an explanation of why this is so. So it comes from this way. If I have a small horn antenna, and it picks up, it has a very broad beam width, and it picks up a large area of sky. So I might say, well, if I have a 2-foot dish, why don't I get a 10-foot dish? So the thing is, if this is a 1-foot dish and this gives an area, a particular area of the sky, if this is a 2-foot dish, it gives you half the area. So the problem is you can't get ahead. You make the antenna, receiving antenna bigger, but you wind up receiving from less of the area of the sky. So what it turns out to be is you can measure the cosmic microwave background with the smallest of antennas. The only difference is you might want to have an antenna that's big enough so that the beam width is sharp enough so you can point it up at the sky and be sure you're receiving only from the sky, not from the trees in the backyard. Okay? But these exactly cancel because of the second law of thermodynamics. And by the way, you can go, I have a website for this. Go to my website and you can download any of these articles that I mentioned. The only really good explanation of this is in this book, CMB Telescopes and Optical Systems, and by handing it out, and you can download that from my website. Okay, so the second thing is, what frequency range can we use? Well, we already know that the atmosphere is fairly transparent in the sort of 1 to 10 gigahertz region, and then absorption due to oxygen and water vapor it's pretty bad as we go up to higher wavelengths. But this chart is not absorption. This is the emission of the atmosphere. Okay, and so there's quite a bit of noise in the atmosphere from non-thermal background from the galaxy. That's Jansky's. This is Jansky's radio waves up here, and they're relativistic electrons that are emitting, and there's quite a bit of noise in this area, up to about a gigahertz. And people who do 2-meter moon bounce know that quite a bit of the sky is really quite noisy. And then when you get up above 10 gigahertz, you get into the regime where you're looking at the water and oxygen. But there's a fairly good window down here between about 1 gigahertz and up to 10. And maybe 24 gigahertz too, that's a possibility. So 10 gigahertz is a pretty good frequency range. There's a lot of equipment that's available. And you'll see there's a trade-off. I have to aim this thing at the sky and get a reading of the microwave noise that's coming from the sky, but then I have to aim it at some sort of a Dewar flask or a cold load where I have liquid nitrogen and liquid helium. And when you get down to 1296 over here, 2304 over here, the antenna gets pretty big and making it kind of difficult to make that cold calibration load. So I chose 10 gigahertz, and I basically have used Dish Network hardware to do this type of measurement. The atmosphere really doesn't absorb very much here. This is the emission of an imperfect absorber at that wavelength. So how do we do this? What's the fundamental idea? We make what's called a microwave radiometer. Microwave radiometer is a radio telescope that has some sort of provision to calibrate its sensitivity. We have some sort of a substance, a generator or something that generates a known amount of noise, and we point our receiver at that thing, and we calibrate it, then we point it at the sky, and based on the difference between what we saw with the calibration and the sky, we can say the sky is at a certain temperature. This instrument was invented by Robert Dickey, the Princeton professor, when he was at MIT during the war. He worked on radar during the war, and after the war he published a couple of papers, and one of them was the invention of a microwave radiometer. So what we're going to do in this case, what I've done in this case, is I have these three sources that I can look at. One, I'm going to look at liquid nitrogen. I'm going to put an absorber in liquid nitrogen, and I'm going to let it radiate at 77 Kelvin, which is the boiling point of liquid nitrogen. Then I also have another absorber. These are all microwave absorbing materials. I'll show you what it is. At 290, which is ambient, the ambient temperature is 290, 300 Kelvin. And I'm going to calibrate my instrument at this temperature and this temperature, and I'm going to point it at the sky, and I'm going to do a linear extrapolation to get the temperature of the sky. I'll tell you why it is that this is a linear extrapolation. So there's 77K, there's 290K, there's the sky. Okay, and this is related to the way we measure noise figures of amplifiers. This is the Y method. A noise figure machine has a room temperature source and a heated source. And we put our preamplifier in there. We measure these two temperatures, then we put the preamp in there. And you're using these two temperatures to calibrate the noise figure meter, and you're getting the noise figure of your preamplifier. So typical noise figures for really quiet preamplifiers might be a half dB, which is 35 Kelvin. Okay, so it's important to understand what the nature of the black body curve is, and how we use that noise that comes from a black body that's radiating to do this calibration. And the most important thing is that it's linear. And the black body curve has that shape which I showed. And at the low frequency end of the shape, you're in a region called the Rayleigh-Jeans approximation. It's basically the classical approximation for the radiation. And it turns out when you're in the Rayleigh-Jeans approximation, which in our the conditions we're using, below 30 gigahertz, you're in the Rayleigh-Jeans approximation. It's a standard KTB kind of arrangement. If you want to know what the total noise power is that you can observe with your antenna, it's just K times the T of the antenna times B, which is the bandwidth. So it's really quite simple. And because of the fact that it's in the Rayleigh-Jeans approximation, it's linear. Just you can see here that the power you observe is linear in temperature. If H nu over KT, that is to say the spacing, the quantum spacing, is very small, and this Rayleigh-Jeans approximation obtains. But if it turns out that H nu over KT is a large number, then you're in the quantum regime, and then it's not linear anymore. You still make the measurement, but it's a little bit more complicated. Okay, and so because of that, because it's linear, and because it's additive, this is true. T at the antenna that we measure, pointing out in space, is the T from the cosmic microwave background coming down, T from the atmospheric emission that's coming from the atmosphere, plus T of the amplifier noise. It really simplifies the whole process, yes.
But you really have left off the T due to the attenuation and side lobes of the antenna.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, you might say there's a T in here, which is a system temperature, shall we say.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know how to...
Antenna noise, or antenna system noise.
That's right, antenna system noise. And I can't differentiate between those components. I just lump it into that. And I'll show you when we do this, when we're done, not only do we get an estimate for TCMB, we are also measuring the noise figure of the system. It's part of the same measure. So, okay, so there is it cosmic microwave radiometer. I call it the cosmic microwave radiometer. It's a microwave radiometer. It's built in the spirit of telescope makers, and so to honor Dobsonian telescopes, I made it out of plywood, just like my Dobsonian. And when it's sitting there, you know, in the basement next to the telescope, I can't tell which is which. Right? Now, if you were a real physicist, you would make this out of aluminum, you know, and make a rack with aluminum and hang all those pieces off. But this looks like friendlier. Okay, sure. Also, this is like a desk, see, because I can write over here. So what is this thing? So here's the horn antenna, and right now it's pointed at the sky, and typically you might also have a ground shield, which is some sort of aluminum or copper sort of shield, so that the glow that's coming from the ground around you doesn't get into your antenna. And over here, I built a number of these. This one was a nicer picture that looks simpler. Over here, there's an absorber, and it's at room temperature. So it's just a cylinder with microwave absorber in it. The microwave absorber looks like this. Okay, so it's got little pyramids, and you stick that in there, and you point your antenna at it, and this thing is glowing at whatever temperature it's at. So that's in there. Okay, and then this is, I'm going to describe this. This is a Dewar flask. It's got liquid nitrogen in it. And in the bottom, it also has a perfect absorber, some more microwave absorber. And so the operation of this instrument is I pointed at the sky, I pointed at room temperature, I pointed at this guy over here, and then I get 77 Kelvin. What I'm essentially doing is I'm getting a slope between these two, and I'm taking that line and simplify the IF strip. This is a filter, 50 megahertz filter, goes into this guy, and I just read it, okay? So that's what a system would look like. Now it's very, very important to understand that in doing this, I could not have done this without eBay. And so my friend Ken Stevens and I invented a word, it's bebop. It's bebop. It's buildable with eBay obtainable parts. Okay? And it's extremely important. It's completely changed amateur fooling around. In the old days, if I needed, say, for example, that Hewlett-Packard meter, I'd have to go around and knock on doors in physics departments and find somebody who's got an old one up in the cabinet. But nowadays, everybody puts it on eBay. So as I was working on trying to make this thing, if I needed something, a Dewar flask, 50 megahertz, 1 gig center frequency filter, I just go on eBay and I buy it. So it cost me about, the Dewars were the most expensive. Cost me about $500 to build this thing. And you too can do this. Okay, so this is the temperature calibration with liquid nitrogen in it. And what's done here, this is an article, you can go to my website and download it. It's a Dewar flask, and Dewar flasks, by their construction, have a metallic coating that's on the inside of the glass to reflect infrared to keep it cool. But what this constitutes is this Dewar flask. There's your horn antenna pointed into the Dewar flask. It's a multi-mode waveguide. And down at the bottom of this multi-mode waveguide is microwave absorber with pyramidal shape, and it's got liquid nitrogen, and it's emitting radiation due to the black body in here at 77 Kelvin. And I've got a horn antenna up here, and if I fill the aperture of the horn antenna with radiation from this source, and it's bouncing off this metallic coating here, it just goes up into my my horn antenna, and that's a proper reading of the radiation from this absorber. Okay. These calibration type arrangements are called cold loads. It's called a cold load. And these people here, this is in Smoot. Smoot is the gentleman who did win the Nobel Prize for his work on the cosmic microwave background. He has a whole bunch of graduate students who, over a period of time, measured the cosmic microwave background from about gigahertz all the way up to about 90 gigahertz. And they published a series of articles. And most of what I've done is based on their articles. So they have windows. They have mylar windows that are heated so that there's no formation of ice on the inside of this thing. And instead of relying on this metallic coating, they have mylar, aluminum-coated mylar on the inside of this thing to form the waveguide. Basically, this has been sort of an adventure to see what can I get away with. Do I have to make it as complicated as that? What I found was that when liquid nitrogen evaporates from a pool of liquid nitrogen, the nitrogen that's going out is dry. All the water vapor is down here. Okay, so this is completely dry nitrogen evaporating, and if I put the horn antenna on the top with some little collar with a couple of holes in it, dry nitrogen is coming out, and the professional apparatus that they had they used it for weeks at a time without getting any ice coating on it. I can make a measurement in 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes, this is fine. Okay, so that's on the cheap, and it works pretty well. Okay, so the microwave system that I have is a low noise block from Dish Network. You can buy these on eBay now for $3.50. Get all you want. And they have remarkably good performance. They really have remarkably good performance. So inside there's a horn antenna, there's a preamplifier, there's a mixer, there's a local oscillator. And by choosing my IF frequency to be a gigahertz, I'm looking at 10.75 gig. So that's just below the TV band and just above the ham radio band. This is a 2-cavity filter that I bought. It cost me $50. This is an IF amplifier. It has a mimic in it. It's got about a 3 dB noise figure. And this Hewlett-Packard is the analog meter. In the beginning, I wanted to do this all analog. I was worried about other noise. But I think you certainly could build a system like this. You could use this for $3.50 and have a software-defined radio, right? And instead of a power meter over here, you could have any one of a number of apps that measures noise power. And this is kind of old-fashioned, but I wanted to guarantee that no noise would creep in. The most important thing has to do with that linear property. This is a linear extrapolation. And I fooled around with a lot of equipment. And unfortunately, almost all communications equipment has automatic gain control. So they're far from linear. Okay, and I found it's difficult in many of these systems, ham equipment and other equipment, to disable the AGC properly. And I got all kinds of wild answers. It wasn't until I went to this, I bought this IF amplifier. It has a very wide dynamic, linear dynamic range. And after I put this system together like this, it worked fine. It's amazing that this doesn't have AGC. When you buy one of these, you can buy a booster amplifier when you want to send a signal from your dish on your lawn into your basement, and you can buy those booster amplifiers in any one of the electronics stores, but they're terrible. They have terrible nonlinear response. Okay, so this is what I use. This is my front end. So this is my little microwave antenna. It's got a little horn in here, and it's got a what looks like a planar ring system, conical planar ring system in here. On the edges here, it's got these rings that could go around. And it has a pretty wide frequency range, and I'm just sitting right near the bottom of the IF range. And this was a really good one. This one cost me $11.99. Okay, but I measured, by virtue of doing this measuring of the sky, I measured the system temperature for this thing. This is 85K, so that's like 1.2 dB at 10 gigahertz for 11 bucks. That's pretty good, and I think the reason why is they make 1 million of them, and they got some really good transistor in there, and it's really cheap because they make a lot of them. So, okay. All right, so now, the problem with that system is it has like a 75-degree field of view. So when I aim it up at the sky, I have to be extremely careful not to get any trees. Additionally, we'll learn that you have to make some measurement of the emission in the atmosphere, and we do that by making measurement at different angles pointing up in the atmosphere. So what I did was I designed a horn extension on here. This is made out of 10,000 brass sheet, and I went to some electronics book, and I found an optimized horn design for 10 gigahertz for 10 degrees. And so I made this thing, and then I have a little clamp, and I put it on the end of that. And we'll see, I'm going to mention there's some other people in Europe who are doing these measurements. And this has to do with, if you took this and used this for a feed on the dish has all sorts of metal parts and stuff like that. And there's a lot of scatter. Okay, so I'm in the horn school. The horn school is if I build a horn properly, it has much less scatter than a dish. Okay, but I don't know if I'm doing this right. I wish that somebody who designs dishes would help me a little bit. I have to make a proper match from this corrugated horn with a planar ring system here, which is matched to space, and then I'm just adding this ad hoc. I'm sticking this thing on the front of it, and I don't know if I can do that properly. But anyway, this is what it looks like. Here's my little Dish Network horn, and this is, I can play this thing too. You look inside, you can see the rings in there.
I'll give you the answer.
Yeah?
You should be matching at the waveguide inside the rings. The rings are just there to broadband.
Yeah, so I don't know how to do that properly. You mean to say you just stick it in there at that point?
Yes. Because they've already got a circular waveguide in there.
That's exactly right. And the other stuff is a beam forming, I guess you would call it.
Well, no, the other stuff is in there. That was invented by Bob Bruner at ComSat Labs. Advertisement for old company to broadband the response of, of the feeds.
Yes. We're running out of time? All right, I'll click some buttons here.
It probably won't make any significant difference to what you do, but to be pedantic, to answer your question, you should be on the inside.
I see. All right, so here's the radiometer. This is a microwave absorber, and it's looking at microwave absorber. And this is the doer, and this is the new horn. And here it is pointed at the sky. And here, so I'll just end with this. So this is what I get. I make a measurement at the ambient temperature. I make a measurement at 77 Kelvin. I do a least squares fit. I get a line. The line can be extended down to 0 temperature. Okay, and those of you who measure those figures, know that this is the Y method. In the Y method, this part here is the system temperature. It's the same for any temperature coming in the front, and so it comes over here, and where this intersects the Y-axis, I get the system temperature. And I made this, and it's about 85 Kelvin. That's pretty good. Now, additionally now, I've pointed at the sky, I get a number here. So now I've calibrated the instrument. I just say, well, this was my reading, and I got, when I pointed at the sky, this is my calibration line, everything's linear. So when I go there, I get the temperature of the sky. So, and using references from the Astrophysical Journal, I can go through these calculations. And in this particular case, I got 8.9 Kelvin. All right? Yeah?
What was the noise floor of the power meter?
Oh, I've had enough gain in the front of it so that I'm sitting in the middle of the range. Okay? So, at the time when I did this, there were two young fellows in Germany who were making these measurements, and they got approximately 5.2 Kelvin from the sky. So I subtract 5.2 from 8.9, I get 3.7. Not bad. Not bad. I mean, I don't know what performance I should be held to, but the first time I did this, I thought that was pretty good. So now Friday, before I came, I made another measurement, and I got 10.8 Kelvin, and I'm doing my own measurements here, and it's not working out like it should, but in any event, I got 6 Kelvin, so I got 4 Kelvin from it. Okay, so it's not too bad. So let me just quickly say, how would one go about measuring the emission from the atmosphere? And it's from geometry. Here I'm looking through the atmosphere to the zenith, and the two principal things that I'm seeing after the system temperature is the sky and the atmosphere radiating back down. If I change the angle, I just make the path longer. And to a good approximation, the new path causes more emission to come in as secant theta. Okay, so if I aim my horn up here and I aim it over there, I can have two equations and two unknowns. I can get the atmospheric emission. So this is what I do. I aim it at the sky, and I aim it at 45 degrees, and then I calculate the atmospheric. So one thing I want to say is you can look at the various measurements that have been made, and there's two things. One, on a clear day, it's about 5 or 6. This is a model. This was an actual measurement in Germany. As it starts to rain, it gets up to about 15 Kelvin. Okay, but if you go up, here's a White Mountain in California, at 12,500 feet. Personelli and those guys made a measurement and found out that there was only a Kelvin at 12,000 feet. Yeah.
The one thing you needed to do before that, though, was to plot the noise power as a function of elevation angle all the way from horizontal to vertical to get an idea of how much of that noise was side lengths on.
That's my problem. I'm doing that right now. Because I'm getting more than I should as I go over.
And then the answer is to use the hog horn instead of the motor horn.
Yes, that's a possibility. So that's what we're doing now. So anyway, I'll stop here. I just want to say that there are these people in Europe. I call them the dish guys, okay? Because they built instruments similar to mine, and they use the dish, the real dish network dish, okay? And what they do is they make a shield, a ground shield, okay, to keep the scattered light away. And what you see over here, this guy, he's an astronomer in France, Michel Piat. He this is his dish, and in order to avoid spillover, he has a skirt on his dish, a wide skirt on his dish. So I correspond with him, and I keep saying, you'll never get anywhere with this. But the fact of the matter is, these people, and I get about the same results. So the scatter can't be that bad.
But you can measure it, so that you don't have to guess.
Yes, I guess that's true. The one thing that I want to say that's important, the hams, I know this expression, they call it the gain effect. When you measure performance of an amplifier, you're taking the amplifier and connecting it to one source, and you're connecting it to another source. There's two different temperatures, and you use the Y method. But the thing is, if the SWR on these two sources isn't exactly the same, you get a fairly large effect because the amplifier performance is very sensitive to the SWR. So this is called the gain effect. Well, I have the same thing too. I have to make sure when I point it at the sky, at the door, and at room temperature, that everything looks like free space. And I've made numerous measurements of this, and you really got to be careful to do this right. Okay, so I'm working on that now, particularly about the fact that the index of refraction of liquid nitrogen is 1.2 at 10 gigahertz. An index of refraction of 1.2 is pretty high. Okay, that's like glass. Okay, and as a consequence, I get reflections off the front surface of the liquid nitrogen, which cause a sort of a cavity effect. If I move it up and down, the reading that I get goes up and down. So I've been working on tilting the doer over so that I get to Brewster's angle for an index of refraction of 1.2, and the reflection goes to 0, and it actually does. So that's where I am now. So thank you very much. I have very little to offer in the sense that when you make this measurement, this is going to be like this for at least another 5 billion years. And since it's not good enough to get all that fancy jiggles in there, I'm trying to figure if there's something else I could do. So on your way out today to go to lunch, there's another speaker, right?
Yeah, we have one more speaker, Wayne.
Okay. I'm going to set this thing up in the pad. I've got some liquid nitrogen, and you can watch it. Thank Plug it in and when you okay, well, I'll get out of your way. That's what we need to do. Thank you. I learned a whole lot of physics.
If you don't know, there's a living room there, this was
So the waveguide is just bigger,
stay
that reduces attenuation between the two sides. Because a flare is disruption, so disruption is bad. It would have to somehow raise the ionization. Somehow to increase the waveguide size for a brief short. To not be attenuated. I'm just going to ask a question about an ion. I kept looking back there.
I know.
Yeah, right.
This is you. So the waveguide is the
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a hired a research scientist, but I told her. Yeah, you know, one lecturer from another, right? I missed the last part, I didn't have the time. There's some discussion, if you do this, can you get a QSL code? So I propose that we contact the Empire. It's possible the Empire controls the entire universe by now, right? And so I think that they would be able to issue a QSL. I'm going to make that proposal. Oh, yeah.
I got back in last slide. What was the conclusion?
Well, the conclusion is
white spots in
no, you can't see that in this instrument. I would say the conclusion is the conclusion of the audience. If I can measure 2.73 Kelvin plus or minus 5, which is about what the accuracy is from one day to the next, would you accept that I've really detected those? Yeah, I think that's good enough.
Oh, you can always do better.
Well, I'm all.
Is that near a water absorption band?
Well, it's in a window. It's just below.
Get up about 10 gigahertz.
Get up to 20 gigahertz, you start seeing the water.
Yeah, because I used to go where the officers at Concept Islands. I can't remember what we would do it before.
Yeah, well, there's a whole industry of people who use 10 gigahertz and 20 gigahertz, 50 gigahertz.
How do you get the, can't get it back on the screen?
Turn it off. Turn it off. So you have to turn the screen off. From this stick. So you got to subtract. So you actually practical space. Listen to Texas smile.
And it's inverted now. What is it? Just
So before you turn it off, turn it back on.
Yeah. And that was nice called an inverted L. And you use a main, well, the mast makes 30 feet, so
Okay, we're going to need my horn. I'm going to set this up just outside the door. And I have liquid nitrogen, which hopefully will get the I'll make a play. Where do you get liquid nitrogen? I buy Syracuse, New York from a welding supply. Right, because they use it for various kinds of metal processing. But they charge a lot of money if you buy it commercially. So I could get it from the Syracuse University Physics Department near my house. They probably would charge me 20 cents a liter. Okay, $25 for 5 liters.
From the point of view of the experiment.
I only make a measurement once every couple of weeks, and I go back and I fool around, and then I go get more liquid nitrogen and I do it again. So it's not that much. It's a lot harder to get into the physics department. Yes, I have a travel metal, aluminum Dewar flask. They won't let me come in with a glass Dewar flask and fill it up. So I have to show up with a metal Dewar flask. Yeah, safety approved. And they fill that up 5 liters and they charge me $25. eBay. Oh, everything on eBay. Just type in doer. I bought a number of doers on eBay, but they're not cheap because there's a pretty big demand. So, doer flask that I use cost me $250 on eBay. But if I had to buy that new, it would be a lot more.
Where are you at?
Okay, thank you very much again. This is really a brief report, and as much as anything, it's an invitation for all of you who might be interested to participate with us again this August the 12th we're going to repeat the experiment, and we need all the listening stations that we can muster. So this is really the message here, Colin. So you can flip through the Athens State stuff we saw yesterday. Okay, so what we did last year at this conference, Jay, Chip, several of us, Adrian, a whole bunch of us were talking about meteor scatter after Chip's presentation, and we are interested in the fact that the high-power TV transmitters around the world are going away, which is going to somewhat limit or even eliminate meteor scatter as we know it now anyway, and it's already affected it. But there's some proposals out there that we could make a continental U.S. network, communication network, using meteor scatter and amateur radio transmitters as the source of the RF to produce the scatter. So we wanted to just do some experimentation with that, and we did so last year right after this annual meeting to coincide with the Perseids meteor shower phenomenon that we're all familiar with. Next slide. So as you know, Chip has done quite a lot of work with meteor scatter. He has the web-based meteor scatter monitor, livemeteors.com. And so basically what happens with meteor scatter is whenever a piece of space debris, whether it be a meteor or space junk or whatever it is, aliens invading Earth, enter the atmosphere, it leaves an ionized trail behind it. And this ionized trail is capable of reflecting RF energy just like we're accustomed to with the different layers of the ionosphere. And so it produces what's commonly referred to as an echo. And these things last a matter of seconds, sometimes maybe at best a minute or something, usually seconds. And they make a little sound, and Chip is going to pull some up here in a minute and show you some results, I think. But the government, in particular U.S. government, military, I guess it's DOD, has actually developed a communication system that scans the sky for meteor echoes, and when it finds one, it bloop, sends out a flash of data or information which is reflected and picked up somewhere else. So anyways, all that's fascinating, so we thought we'd see, can we generate meteor echoes or scatter with relatively low power ham gear. Okay, Colin. So what we did, we conjured up this experiment whereby as kind of a central location, and the effectiveness of the scatter, you have to be not too close to the source of the meteor scatter, not too far away. It makes a difference. I think Skip addressed that last year. So I'm located in the Athens, Huntsville, Alabama area, so we decided that I was kind of in a central location. So I generated the RF, and we alternately beamed it toward Denver, Colorado, where Jay's located, and Washington, D.C., where Chip has his meteor scatter receiver set up, and we just monitored that frequency while I was transmitting to see if we could get any scatter. So Chip is going to talk about the results. The interesting thing was that with a very relatively low power, as you see in there, these, by the way, these old analog TV transmitters have megawatts literally of power, gigawatts on occasion, I guess. And we were using it at best in the order of like 3 kW ERIP, which is way down compared to what we're accustomed to. So we really, you know, it was a long shot if we were going to hear anything. The good news was that maybe we did hear some things, and so it was encouraging. The overall thing was encouraging. And Chip, if you want to talk about it now and maybe pull up some of the results, we'll go from there.
Give me just 1 minute, I'll go on the website, so I don't want to open for
Yeah, while he's setting that up, let me just say again, this August the 12th.
Is it connected to internet?
Sir?
Is it connected to internet, this one? No.
Yeah, it's connected. You're good. Oh, yeah, internet? Yeah, I don't know about that.
No.
August the 12th, which is a Saturday, we're going to try the experiment again. So we would like everyone to monitor 6 meters, if you have that capability, at 50.070, 50.07 megahertz. We're going to start at like 6 a.m. Central Time and probably do the experiment for 3 or 4 hours. Then we'll pick up later in the day. And this should coincide with a real good activity, maybe not the peak, but close to the peak of the Perseus meteor shower, which we would see a large increase, like 200%, the normal meteor. Yes, sir.
But you know hams have been communicating via meteor scatter with this
right.
power for years.
I've heard that rumor, yes, sir. I personally haven't, but yes. Yes, we've heard that.
So what's the so what are you using for your transmission? What amperage or what power out are you?
Well, the setup that we used last year, and we'll probably start using again, although we're looking some other alternatives, was 500 watts into a beam antenna, 3-element beam. So that gave us about a 3 kW effective radiated power with the antenna gain and so forth. So that's not much. Yes, sir.
There's standard beacons for ham. And are any of the beacons at the right frequency to?
There's one at 70 at 7.1. I mean 071.
Yeah, and Chip, and he can address that. He was aware of some of the beacon frequencies, and I think we looked at that, but we were mainly just interested in creating meteor scatter echo using the transmitter. Yes,
Which way do you point that beam?
Well, 2 different directions for the experiments we were doing. First, we were pointing it toward Chip, because he has the livemeteor.com receiving station set up in DC, and we can monitor that over the internet. So anybody who wants to participate and doesn't have 6 meters can just tune in to the livemeteors.com website. Chip is going to have that receiver reset to 50.07, and you'll see any scatter that he picks up at his location based on our transmitting toward him.
Well, I can receive 6 meters.
Right.
Okay, you're going to be transmitting just CWID over and over again?
What we're actually doing is we kind of just back of the envelope calculated what a relative 50% duty cycle might be on the transmitter, and we ended up sending basically CW DITs at 13 words per minute for about 9 minutes at a time. Then we'd give a station ID 2 or 3 times and start the whole process over using electronic keyer. And I think one of the things that we learned was that probably wasn't a very effective way to do it. So we're looking into how can we do that and not overtax the transmitter equipment. Yes, sir.
JT65.
Pardon me?
JT65, digital.
Maybe. I'm not a digital comm person myself, so I'm not familiar with any of that. But yes.
But you've got a sideband transmitter, so you have everything you need to run JT65.
Yes, probably. Yeah.
And that probes continuously, and then does an exchange when it detects the meteor. And that data is accumulated and is published on the web.
Sounds like that might be a good approach. It really does. Okay, so we're about to show you some actual results from the experiment here in just a moment, we think. So bear with us.
To address a couple of issues that came up there. One reason we do not
depend on the existing ham beacons is they transmit in CW. And what we found, say again?
I'm not talking about ham beacons.
Yeah, well, somebody mentioned
They're
those.
rather low power.
Right. But they are useful for that. But what we needed was something that more closely resembled the profile that we were accustomed to seeing on the regular meteor observations. So we needed a constant carrier of some kind. And the closest we could come to that was fast dips, in other words. That did much better for us than trying to figure when we were getting sporadic heat or some other mode of propagation for the beacon. And that was the reason also why we didn't go with JT65 or any of the other digital modes. We were just trying to find something that we could compare with the long history of meteor reception using TV carriers.
Well, JT65 was optimized for getting information across, whereas you're wanting to know more exactly the time of the meteor occurrence. So it's probably better for that. But if you, with CW, if your power amp would take it, FSK is legal on beacons, and FSK would leave you a continuous signal and use a fairly small shift so it'll stay in the band pass of a receiver. The biggest problem is if your transmitter will take key down that long. Water cooling.
Yeah, we were trying to keep the 3-500 just a dull red glow pretty much, which is normal operating temperature for the 3-500, I guess, and then roughly. So it didn't seem to bother it at all. So we felt like we were probably operating in a safe mode there, but very open-minded.
You might get some complaints from hams.
Pardon me?
You might get some complaints from hams looking at the beacons in that range, running 50 kilowatt.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, they're going to find out who's running these dots.
Yeah, well, we identified the station, so I never heard any complaints from anybody, but there you go.
No, this computer is being bizarre.
Oh, I found a 2020.
Sometime when you get a chance, I'd like to talk to you about it.
Anyway, it's getting close to lunchtime, I realize that. So if you're interested in this topic at all, if you would just talk with Chip, Jay, or myself sometime before the end of the conference, we will maybe work out some more of the details. If anybody has higher power directivity capability that we're currently using, we're open-minded. If we need to change the frequency based on something, we can certainly do that. But it was an interesting experiment, and I think we were encouraged somewhat, and so we can just
use the DX phone frequency.
Oh, that'll make it real popular.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're about to have some results here. Teamwork. Okay, Chip, it's all yours.
Okay, that's correct. On water. So you tune into the beacon and see if it's on track. So in fact, 20 people we have propagation. So you know where the location of propagation is.
But not meteor shaft.
A lot of people.
Not meteor shaft, right?
Okay, so during a few days in August, we use this website as a place for people to listen to the data for a few hours. When I pointed at them, instead of pointing it to Canada, usually I pointed to southwest to Wayne, and I announced this on the website that anyone who was particular at that time could have made observations if they saw anything on the screen. The signal received was present, but very weak, and not really appropriate for SDR Sharp, which is the standard SDR software, which is used for this website. So let me go to the RMC page, which is not really much, but in here is a description, brief description of the project that Wayne already did. So he had one transmitter of 400 watts, and those were the days where he transmitted, some technical data, his call sign, what kind of carrier or of modulation he used, equipment, and that was the frequency, location of antenna, some other technical stuff. And this is a very simple diagram on map between me, located in A, and his transmitter located in point B, distance being about 593 miles. And that's what the technical explanation was. And if I go back, I have two reports of data received, one on July 30. So I didn't use the SDR Sharp to get the weaker signals. I used Argo software, which is a very, very sensitive audio recorder using FFT. And this is a brief explanation, observation at that time, and me having the story here. But anyway, those are some pictures taken on the application in those days. We assume that was a possible meteor thing on that particular hour. And there was another one here, which was a little strange, looking strange. Then another long one, looking strange, and a possible, I said, unknown source, because there were two right now. And so on, another thing, and at the end, I saw this one again, at the end, let me scroll, okay, and this one turned out to be not the signal, because I saw this 1 hour after Wayne has interrupted transmission. So those things were not meteor beams, but this one was Wayne. This one, this long line, this one was a meteor reflection from his system. This one. Now, why these three lines is, I assume, the signal was not pure, was not really a clear CW carrier at that time. So that was date July, then we tried again a week later. And there are other results. You see that blob? That is Wayne signal. Also there.
What is the frequency separation between those three?
Varies about 2 or 3 hertz. Very, very, very. If you look on the scale on the right, those are hertz here. Okay, so maybe not 2. So distance between those two, total distance is about 10 hertz. 10 hertz.
It's not 60 hertz.
No. So those are, this is another block, and this is again the other one. So those are some mixed results that we got with equipment that was not really, to me, appropriate, very well, at least on my side, to do this experiment. I didn't have much at that time. My antenna is not designed for 15 megahertz, for 6 meter. It's designed for TV VHF. So it is fine-tuned on 56, let's say, megahertz. But everything occurred on 50.06, I think.
megahertz. And some other stuff that I think can be fixed, and we can run the experiment again and have that, with better results. So that was my very short report. You can get this. Okay. I don't know what to do now. Just here. I'll take internet for.
Okay, well, at any rate, we had some interesting results, at least to us. So if anybody's interested in participating again, the date's August the 12th, which is a Saturday. We'll start at 6 a.m. Central Time on that date. And if you are interested and will send an email, we'll have a real-time email broadcast pretty much of what's going on, where we're transmitting, in what direction, and all that kind of thing. So if you'll just send an email to drwayne, Dr. Wayne, at athens.edu, then I'll include you on the list. We had about probably, what, a dozen people last year on the email list that we're trying to listen in. So if you're interested, we'll be glad to include you, and also be aware that you can look at chipslivemeteors.com if you don't have a receiver, and just monitor that. Thank you very much. Let's go eat.
Similar results from the other people that were mine?
Yeah, but again, it was a pretty large confusion as to what was going on, so we really didn't have a chance.
I refer to these guys.
Basically, that's the auto sign. The auto assign you can do what you do. Yeah, my dad used to call me. He goes, but that rate the end result of lack of conditions because the amplifier didn't get efficient. And then the other possibility is to lower the light voltage. You lower the light voltage. Yeah. Run the amplifier. I like running the everything. Is that speed? The efficiency does it. It's not how long we're living. So we're trying to get the most output of these heated two something more substantial. Two basic with balls to the walls. You know what I mean? Lower the plate voltage to keep the dissipation. And then of course you have to do two